among the religious spiritual audience also, some may ask a question, when we have these so-called calamities and human sufferings, we ask the question, what are the real causes of the losses? Are they the result of God's fury, or is it the result of man's folly? So do the calamities have something to do with the moral behavior of the victims, or are they outcomes of negligence and lack of respect for the limits of Earth's capacity? So this is, I think, the key question that we are talking about, or focusing in this seminar. And I think to answer it, we definitely have to, as the title of the presentation or the session says, we need to actually care. But before we can properly care for nature, we need to know nature. We need to understand nature. The knowledge of ecology, oikos, logos, the study of home has to be highlighted. It has to be put in the curricula of religious studies, for example, and vice versa. In the curricula of economics, in the curricula of ecology subjects, STEM subjects, science subjects, you have to embed some values which actually come from religious views. Next. So we speak about worldviews, the way we look at the world, and today the dominant worldview is the man-centered. Briefly, it says that man is the measure of everything. By his reason alone, he can know and solve everything. Resources are infinite. Other species are of utilitarian value only. And this view is very much in synchrony with extreme materialism. Everything around us has value only if you can sell it, if you can buy it, if you can gain from it. Yeah? And unfortunately, sometimes this view is also put upon the human being, the human body itself. So people are selling organs, for example. So this is a very dangerous worldview. So we have to guard against this. In the West, or in the, when I say West, the West is not a specifically geographical West. In a secular, in a world that does not accept belief systems, for example, we have the life-centered worldview, wherein man is not the measure of everything. Reason need to be aided by something else, by values. And there need to be a understanding, and for this you need scientific literacy about ecology, about nature. Resources are actually finite, limits do exist, and then once we transgress the limits, we cause imbalances to happen in nature, and these are the things that causes the catastrophes that we are witnessing. So the material dimension is to be balanced with the spiritual dimension. So this is where perhaps today we need to speak about a new worldview wherein religion and science are harmonized. Next, please. I'm sorry to have to share this image of the human being, but I think it's very well known that one of the crises underlying unsustainability today is the issue of the loss of meaning of the self. Who are we? Where do we come from? Why are we here? Where do we go after we leave our bodies, for example? So we can explain this in purely religious terms, or we can, but I think if you explain it in purely religious terms without recourse to the hard facts of the conditions that we are in, it might be a slow process. So this is just an example. Okay, so poverty today exists not because we cannot feed the poor, but because we cannot satisfy the rich. So there's an issue with wealth. There's an issue with wealth that is pursued without meaning, without justifications for it not to be shared. So in the 10th International Congress on Obesity, for example, there's an estimated 1.5 billion overweight people globally, and 10 years later it is 1.9 billion and so on. And in 2019, 39% are obese worldwide. Yet in developing countries, 1 out of 10 children die before the age of 5 due to malnutrition, and 690 million people, which is 21% children, are perpetually hungry. So when we say there's a crisis of meaning, it has practical impacts, especially in terms of the gap between rich and poor. So this is some things that we address. And you might say, what has this got to do with knowing nature? Well, ourselves, we are part of nature. Our physical self is the closest nature, quote unquote, that we live with. So if we cannot take care of this nature, small nature that is us, how can we be taking care of the bigger nature that is the earth around us? Next, please. So we'd like to highlight the importance of spiritual intelligence. Today we speak about IQ, intellectual intelligence in the serial processing term of the word, meaning of the word. And then we speak about emotional intelligence, people being good at sensing the emotions of others and their own emotions, and then they manage their emotions. But then I think we need to highlight also the importance of the spiritual intelligence, and it plays a greater function. So spiritual intelligence is the innate human need to connect the self with something larger than itself. So the Quran, for example, says spiritual intelligence is an integrated intelligence that deals with questions of existence and creation, and it provides a model regarding the texture of human intention, morality, law, and social interactions. So spiritual intelligence is the ability with which we exercise goodness, truth, beauty, and compassion in our lives. Spiritual intelligence implies presence of intuitively gifted knowledge and soft skills that includes one's worldview and purpose of life, the ego, the self, plus the awareness of the universe and laws of the divine. So the seat of spiritual intelligence is not only the brain, but also the qalb, which is the heart. So I'm sure in religious traditions, there are literature in this, but the point is that the audience that we are looking at today need also to be educated in terms of the scientific facts. Next. Even science itself is actually a spiritual enterprise, because scientists talk about being inspired through the sense of awe that they feel when they are studying nature. And from a purely non-religious perspective, scientists are saying that those who dwell among the beauties and mysteries of the earth are never alone or are never weary of life. So they feel that there is a kind of spirituality in doing itself, in doing science itself. And of course, for the person who is religiously inclined, the Muslims, for example, talk about the role of tadabbur and tafakkur. This means relating what we observe in nature with what is revealed. And then there is the importance of the Qna verses in the Quran, which means there are verses that actually refer to objects and phenomena and events which are present in nature and history directly. And then there is a significance of the group called the Ulul Albab, and these are the people who never fail to reflect on the phenomena of nature as signs, ayah of the greatness of the Creator. Next. So in a macro global scenario, the United Nations climate chief, Christiana Figueres, has condemned climate change as one of the great humanitarian issues of our time, she says. She argues that faith leaders must take a stronger stance against it and encourage their followers to do the same. And saving the earth and its people from dangerous climate change is an economic, social, and environmental issue, and it is a moral imperative. So religion is the last hope for giving solutions to the climate issue. How do we manage this Anthropocene from continuing to affect us, from continuing to destroy us? Next. It is by changing human behavior. So a lot of research done by so-called non-religious scientists, social scientists. One is done by Paula Posas, J. Posas, for example. And according to her studies, she finds that there is a pivotal role of religion in issues of climate change and environmental justice that hinge primarily on religion's functions in society, ethical teachings, reach and influence, and ability to inspire adherence to action. Religion's ability to inspire action is evaluated empirically against data from 2 compilations of religious activity on climate change. And the analysis indicates that significant religiously based involvement and influence on ethical aspects of climate change, and it points to much greater potential for the role of religion in future solutions to the climate crisis. Our own research has shown that what is needed today is a change in the morality, is a change in the attitude. We need to drop the greed, like we said in the previous slide, there is enough for everybody's need, but not enough for everybody's greed. And that is a moral statement. And only religion is the only discipline that can address that idea. So even non-religious social scientists are supporting the significant role of religion in addressing climate change. Next. So this is just to capture again what we just said. Religion has a major role to play today in addressing climate change. And that's why, as said earlier by our brothers, this conference is extremely timely. And the role of religion is empirically verified. This is a strong statement. What we mean here is that people who are not so keen on religion, for example, always think that religious ideas are unsubstantiable. I mean, they are not verifiable empirically, but we'd like to differ because as we tried, and we'll continue after this if we have time, empirical verification is possible. And religious ability and function is through its ethical teaching. And ethics is something that we need to demystify. What does it mean to be ethical? And why is it important that we have ethics? What happens when we don't have ethics? And there is a great potential for the role of religion in future solutions to climate change. And this is very much emphasized because it is linked to the, as we said again and again, the ethical aspect of climate change. Climate change has a big aspect that is linked to ethics and morality. Next. Even locally, religion or the value of religion in development has been acknowledged by our country's leaders, yes, from this article. Next. So in one sentence, if you like, to summarize, does the Islamic perspective have a solution to offer? Yes. So we call this the sustainability imperative. So you're familiar with these 3 circles, 1, 2, 3 circles, superimposed on one another. This is the so-called sustainability crisis image that we often encounter when we look at global efforts. So Muslim scholars and scientists have given their own interpretation of this. And for them, what we need is justice. What we need is wisdom. What we need is innovation. And this will impact the maslahah or the public interest. So without these 4 tools, for example, or these ideas, it might be difficult to find the right center, which is sustainability. Next. And one example of such a scholar, scientist, engineer who is bringing in a religious dimension into the work is Professor Al-Jayusi. And for him, pollution and corruption are due to the loss of unity between man, nature, and the creator. And there is a need for a fake RBR. If you notice, I'm using both the scientific terminology and also the so-called religious terminology. This is to show to you how this empirical verification is very much part of our thinking. So we need in the laws that talk about the environment, religious laws that talk about the environment, we need to bring both forms of knowledge together. And there is the need for transformational leadership to address the threats of climate change globally. And the global debate on climate change needs to be informed both by religious discourse regarding trusteeship or amanah, because Muslims in the Quran are created to be Khalifah or to hold the life on the earth as a trust. And a holistic approach, which is called the green jihad or striving. To describe the word jihad, it means linguistically striving. And ijtihad, innovation, and zuhud, moderate living, are the principles that are being stressed. Next. Yeah. So we bring us to the main table of discussion. So the whole world, 183 countries or more, perhaps, have ratified this declaration that we will support the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which is to be fully implemented or achieved in the next couple of decades, for example. And it begins with no poverty, and then no hunger, and then good health, and so on and so on. So if Muslims look at the religious law, if Muslims look at the principles that the Creator has laid out in the book of Revelation, we come to the idea of the maqasid of the Sharia, the objectives of the religious law, which is what? Which is number 1, protection of religion. Number 2, protection of life. Number 3, protection of intellect. Number 4, protection of lineage. Number 5, protection of wealth or economic means. So it has already been studied. It has been more or less accepted that there is nothing wrong for Muslims. In fact, Muslims are encouraged to work towards the success of the SDGs, because doing so would also partially mean, at least, that you are carrying out the objectives of the religious law. So next, I have this picture also because on the left-hand side is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and Maslow, as we know, did not belong to any religious group, but then just relying on his empirical research, and this hierarchy or pyramid did come out as a result of his study. So he himself have pointed out the needs of the human being before he reaches self-fulfillment level, right? So it begins with basic needs, and then psychological needs, and then self-fulfillment needs. Now, if you study this properly and you sort of compare it with what we just explained in terms of the maqasid Sharia, or the objectives of the religious law, you find that there is a kind of harmony. Yeah? So this is again what we mean by religious injunctions in terms of addressing climate change and the issue of unsustainability is very much empirically verifiable. Okay, and for Muslims, the middle picture shows the 3 relationships that has to be maintained. There is relationship between man and man, man and nature, which all hinge on his relationship with his Creator. That is why the religion has to be taken in total. Some people believe in theory, but they don't practice. Some people believe in terms of ideology, but they don't practice. So for Muslims in Islam, the practical dimension of religion, the rituals, if you like, but make sure that you understand what lies behind the rituals. I think this is part of the problem in religious life. Some people like to understand, quote unquote, but then they don't like to practice and actually do things. Yeah, but this is not right, because as Maslow already shows to us, our needs are real. Okay? Our physiological needs are real. Our security needs, and so on and so on. So all that hinge upon our practical way of life, which is what religion is supposed to guide us in. Next. This is just to again summarize the Islamic model to address climate change. The 3 components is green jihad, ijtihad, zuhud. We've already looked at this, and this speaks well to the fact, to the belief among Muslims that Islam is a total way of life. Next. This is just to capture the idea again in a technical way, but at the end of it all, green development can only happen through education, and this will lead to a people-centered or life-centered way of doing things. And what is particularly important is that the financial system is in line with the spiritual religious system. Next. So what we need to focus upon, as we already been asked to remind ourselves just now by Brother Su, we need to look at what action plans do we have or can we have on the table. So I'd like to draw attention to some of these logos. These are the people whom we've been working with throughout the years. And most recent, I'd like to draw your attention to the second poster, Al-Mizan, Islamic Covenant for the Earth. And this is the latest effort by a group of Muslim scholars and scientists in terms of declaring to themselves and also to other communities in the world, this is what Islam is supposed to aim at vis-a-vis, taking charge of what needs to be done in the world today. Before that, in 2015, the same group, more or less, came out with what was called the Islamic Declaration on Climate Change. This was in 2015, and this declaration was actually passed on to the people attending the Conference of Parties, or COP 16, I think. Next. So this, interestingly enough, this Islamic Declaration of Climate Change was presented in Turkey, and one of the important audience that it was presented to is a group of multi-faith leaders. We presented it in that meeting to Buddhist scholars, to scholars of many other religious and faith groups, and there was no, they call it conflict in terms of what was to be understood from that declaration. So next, I will be talking a little bit about this Islamic declaration, because if you speak about, if you ask a question, so what do Muslims declare themselves to be wanting to do? So I think this declaration captures that spirit. So in the declaration, it's just a short declaration, 2 pages only, but it contains the preamble, the what's, the why of climate change. It contains the affirmation section, which is the Islamic view regarding environment and climate change, and then the suggestion of call for responding to the way, which is what the word Sharia means, and responding by living alongside the Makasih Sharia. And there is a to-do list for stakeholders, citizens, leaders, governments, corporations, etc. And next. So, first of all, in the preamble, Muslims affirm the fact that, the belief that it is Allah who has created the universe in all its diversity, richness, and vitality, that we human beings are created to serve the Creator of all beings, to work for the greatest good that we can for all species, individuals, and generations of God's creatures. Next. The declaration stresses the principle of balance, or mizan. Allah is the Lord and sustainer of all beings. He created the earth in perfect equilibrium, or mizan. The earth functions in natural seasonal rhythms and cycles, and a climate in which living beings can thrive peacefully. And the present climate change catastrophe is a result of the human disruption of this balance. So this specific admission is an important one, because amongst some groups in the world today, there is refusal to believe that it is human beings that causes the disruption in balance. And as we've stated right in the beginning, beginning the year 2007, scientists themselves have acknowledged the fact that the Anthropocene is a reality. In fact, they are giving that geological name, the epoch that we are in now. You know the Earth in terms of geological age are given different names, different titles. So they would like the Anthropocene to some to be something that is accepted and to be taken action upon. Next.
May I interrupt you a little bit, Professor?
Yes.
We have exceeded our time a little bit.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
So
Thank
let me just go to the very final slide where we look at the community. Last slide, which is number 36. Number 36, yes. So 36, where we have the boys. Next one. This wakaf is talking about how religious wealth, zakat and all that can be used to help the environment. This is, we'd like to remind ourselves, somewhere along the line, the so-called experts, religious or scientific or whatever, you have to go down to the ground level, speak to the people, speak to the youths. This is what we did, and these youths in Kuala Selangor area were educated in terms of the environment, and they formed a youth club to take care of the environment. So thank you so much. Billahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Back to you, Brother Tan.
Thank you so much, Datuk Professor Dr. Azizan. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay,
actually, it was very interesting. I was actually following the very closely. That I also missed the time, Okay. Anyway, I think the key word here is Professor Dato is focusing on is ethics. She's saying that the abuse of nature, we exploit nature due to economic reasons, and only through religion that we can overcome this greed element that leads us to too much of economic reasons, and we exploit nature. And that, I think, is my take-home point from what she said this morning. Anyway, we will go through that a little bit further during the Q&A session. So our second speaker today is Venerable Professor Dr. Kl Dhammajoti. Venerable Professor Kl Dhammajoti is a Malaysian monk who is a renowned Buddhist scholar, especially on the Northern Abhidharma doctrine. He taught at the University of Kelaniya, Sri Lanka for 22 years and subsequently joined the University of Hong Kong as a professor in early 2004, retiring in 2015. Presently, he is the chair professor at School of Philosophy, Renmin University, China, and director of the Buddha Dharma Center of Hong Kong. He has published several books, including Savastivada, Abhidharma, Abhidharma Doctrine and Controversies on Perception, reading Pali Buddhist texts, reading Buddhist Sanskrit texts, and numerous research papers on Buddhist studies. He was also the founding editor of the Journal of Buddhist Studies of the Center for Buddhist Studies, Sri Lanka. Venerable Professor Dr. Kl Dhammajoti has received several awards, fellowships, professorships, and honors from the universities around the world, including Tripitaka Visharada in 1996 by the Amarapura Sri Sadhamma Wangsa chapter of Sri Lanka, Professor of Buddhist Studies by University of Kelaniya, Glorious Sun Endowed Professorship by the University of Hong Kong, Chair Professorship by Renmin University of China, Rector Emeritus by the International Buddhist College, Thailand. Venerable's life mission is to promote integration of Buddhist studies and praxis and the discernment of the Buddha and his Dharma beyond sectarianism for ministries in Malaysia. We have heard the views from the Islamic perspective. Let us now invite Venerable Professor Kl Dhammajoti to share his views from the Buddhist perspective. Over to you, Venerable Professor Dr. Kl Dhammajoti.
Good morning, distinguished leaders and speakers and guests from the Muslim community of Malaysia and worldwide, venerable members of the Buddhist Sangha, distinguished colleagues and friends. My slide will be a simple one. without all these beautiful illustration charts and statistics. And I must first thank the previous speaker for relieving me of all this and giving you a lot of technical details and statistic analysis. For one thing, I'm not an expert in all this, so I prefer to focus directly on the Buddhist perspective on this issue, and to show that Buddhism has a worldview on this to offer. Because I think I will be given only about, perhaps, hopefully a little bit more than 30 minutes. And so I must try to confine to this limit, and I would therefore prefer to just more or less speak, more or less read from my slides, but there are places where I may need to elaborate. Yeah, so first, the current crisis that has been well illustrated and highlighted earlier. And Buddhism, of course, certainly is or has always been aware of this crisis. It's not just a current crisis, it's a crisis of mankind. Buddhism uses the word dukkha, which means the unsatisfactoriness of the human predicament. And one reason for this predicament is the loss of balance, you can say, in the context of this conference, between man and nature. Now, the current human suffering of the COVID-19 disaster is a very concrete exemplification, that the very survival of human beings is being threatened by the imbalance of the human ecosystem. Through this pandemic that we are experiencing, and also the ongoing climate change crisis, etc., nature is in fact sending us a powerful message. Exploiting and putting too much pressure on the natural environment can have catastrophic consequences. We must now accept the fact that if we can't take care of nature, we cannot take care of ourselves. And this is the central point of the Buddhist perspective I hope to share with you. I fully agree, in fact, that the real solution can only be sought, must only be sought within the domain of religion. Undeniably, intellectual and conceptual consideration and analysis of the problem are necessary, and that has been well done just now, you have seen that. Necessary, but not sufficient. Ultimately, the true solution must be a religious one. I put in inverted commas. I shall explain why. This, I believe, is the significance of the present conference. A solution is possible only when the total man, this is the Buddhist perspective, not just his mere intellectual, the total man comprising his cognitive, and affective aspects. It's only when this total man, the totality of the person is involved, and also at his very deepest existential level, that a solution that threatens the whole of humanity become possible. Here we come to the word religion and why I put in inverted commas. And of course, I'm not talking about religion in the institutional sense. For one or better term, I might call it the Freudian sense. And just now we saw the previous speaker also quoting Maslow. And in fact, besides Fromm, there's a whole group of humanistic psychologists and psychoanalysis, and they speak of a kind of religion, you might say, in the humanistic sense. So here, religion is conceived as a sufficiently broad scope one to include all forms of religions. That is, humanistic and non-humanistic. Of course, not necessarily atheistic. Borrowing from Eric Fromm, very broadly, religion can be defined as a frame of orientation with an object of devotion. That applies also, of course, to science, etc. In any human endeavor, any devoted human endeavor. There's always a frame of orientation to which the person is committed to, and that is the final, ultimate object devotion. Fromm, in fact, argues that religious need, in the true sense, is rooted in man's very existence. So in this sense, we call religion an existential need, and therefore it is not a question of choice. A humanistic, human-centered type of frame of reference, such as Buddhism, should progressively lead us to higher levels of the unfolding of the human potential, along with the attainment of ever profounder insight. According to Buddhism, much like what the modern humanistic psychoanalysts and psychology professors say, the goal is a fully actualized man. According to Buddhism, at the stage of the highest unfolding of spiritual insight, the word used in the Buddhist text is panya, Pali, or prajna in Sanskrit. This insight transcends that of ordinary intellectual and conceptual knowledge of the ordinary person. We, at this level, this highest level, according to the Buddhist teaching, we can directly and truly, that is to say, free from conceptual superimposition, see that all humans, not all sentient beings are one. That's the important message. Stated in terms of the doctrine of what is called conditioned co-arising, that is the central teaching of all schools of Buddhism, all beings and all phenomena are necessarily interconnected and interconditioned. Every event that occurs in space-time does so when and only when dependently conditioned by other existent factors. In fact, we can only exist in relation to being conditioned by nature. There is also another important Buddhist doctrine in this context, that is the doctrine of no self, or elaborated in somewhat later stages of Buddhist development called emptiness. Early Buddhism expresses this term in terms of no self. That is the fact of interrelationship. The fact that there's no isolated, totally independent existence of man, or for that matter, any existent. The Northern Buddhist school, Buddhists, speaks of emptiness, shunyata. The highest spiritual insight is that no individual truly exists totally isolated from all existence, sentient and non-sentient, including nature. I shall also introduce you first to the early tradition, that is the Pali tradition, to a discourse called the Karaniya Metta Sutta. That is, loving kindness to be cultivated. This discourse exhorts us to cultivate a mind of boundless love towards all living beings. And the term for living being is Pana Bhuta. And significantly, this includes all that are mobile as well as stationary. Tasawa, Tavarawa, Anavasesa, without any remainder, covering, in other words, the animate beings, men included, and not confined to men, as well as plants as well. In fact, man, and the whole nature. So this discourse exhorts us to cultivate a boundless mind, boundless in the sense of not having any distinction, discrimination in terms of the object of the radiation of this love, this loving kindness. And it is to be cultivated in the manner of, it says, a mother willing to risk her own life to protect her own nature. Imagine that, if we can cultivate that kind of mentality towards nature, that is true caring and loving nature. And today, we will not be suffering all these disasters resulting from the imbalance of the ecosystem. Earlier, you saw a discourse from the early tradition. In the northern Buddhist tradition, an important teaching is called collective karma. It teaches that the totality of human spatial temporal experiences, all experiences, that is of ourselves, the rest of the environment, are necessary, though not fatalistically, the result of our own actions. Not fatalistically because it is in fact on the very basis of the working of karma, the principle of karma, of cause and effect, that we are endowed with power as human beings to change for the better. We can also change for the worse. We have to be responsible for our common future. And this is collective karma. So all the experiences are on the one hand, this is on the one hand, determined by karma, and of course, this is personal karma as well as collective karmas. That is to say, we are responsible for ourselves, for our own future, but at the same time, we are also responsible for what happens in the totality of phenomena existent. What happens to nature that's being exploited? What happens to the negative reaction and response to nature? As a result of it, we are having all these disasters. The happiness or suffering of each single individual is intrinsically linked then with those of others. And to rescue humanity from environment disaster, man must practice and not just think and analyze and argue. And this practice is in fact the creating of karma, personal as well as collective. Of creating karma, loving and caring nature. No one can be truly healthy if nature is sick. This is the Buddhist message. We come to another stage of development of Buddhism, the domain of what is called Abhidharma. And I'm referring mainly to Northern Abhidharma, as also Mahayana. Continuing with the emphasis on karma, which is both personal and collective. Let me quote the teaching of Sarvastivada Abhidharma, and from an authoritative text called the Mahavibhasa, the huge encyclopedic commentary on the Abhidharma doctrines. For reason of time, I shall quote only very, very briefly. In fact, it's a very lengthy description. And that's usually extremely relevant to us because it speaks of the relationship between human actions and the response from nature. So it goes like this, part of it. In a cyclic human nature evolution, when the karma path of killing prevails, the different karma path, killing, stealing, lying, and so on, etc. So killing first. All external things lose their luster and vitality. That is the response. That is the effect of collective karma. And all external things cannot endure long. It continues, when the karma path of stealing prevails, what happens? All external things suffer calamities. There are disasters resulting from frost, pollution, and so on. And these are concretely experienced today, etc. When we have, on the other hand, restraint, or when we have relinquished the karma path of killing, then all external things mostly regain larger vitality and endure for a long period. So it goes on like this about killing, stealing, and all these immoral actions. So the more behavior is very, very much emphasized. But I feel that the additional message is that it is, even the word morality is not sufficient for this kind of descriptions. So it means that this, as a part of the contemplation for the solution of the imbalance of ecological system, one must understand, one must think in terms of for one of better, the spiritual dimension. And these are natural responses to our positive or negative, wholesome or unwholesome behavior, which Buddhism calls karma. Let me now introduce to a very interesting discourse. This is in the Mahayana, and the text is extant in Sanskrit, the very ancient text. It's been translated in English. It's called the Vimakirti Nirdesha. The story is like this, that Vimakirti is supposed to be a layman, very interesting. There's a person living in ordinary society, but he is of profound wisdom. And one day, the Buddha knows that he is sick, and the Buddha wants to send someone to inquire about sickness on his behalf. And all the distinguished disciples, right, with great wisdom, one after another refuse, decline to go on his behalf, because they are all scared of him, because he's a man of such great wisdom and often very sarcastic, and they can't face him. To cut the story short, eventually there's a bodhisattva called Manjushri who undertakes, who knows that he must go on behalf of the Buddha. Nobody else would like to go. So when he goes there, the first question he asked Vimakirti is, "Sir, why are you sick? What is your sickness?" And here we have an extremely profound and interesting answer. Vimakirti says, "Because all sentient beings are sick, I am sick." If I'm translating all this very literally, just now what I've shown you earlier from Mahayana, also a very literal translation, and you can look for yourself some important messages. If the sickness of all sentient beings cease, then my sickness will cease. Sentient beings have been sick all the time, spiritually, and hence I continue to be sick. So the totalistic, the most holistic conception of health is that no one can speak of health truly unless the totality of existence is healthy. And he goes on to say, just an elder having only a single son, when this son gets sick, the parents too become sick. When the son becomes cured, the parents too become cured. And all modern physicians know this principle. If one is sick, if you get COVID, the whole family get COVID. The whole society get COVID. Now, millions of people have died. So the solution cannot be just confined to a particular country, particular race, nationality, religion, and so on, but a totalistic one. Then he says, continue, likewise is a bodhisattva. That is to say, a practitioner of the Mahayana path in relation to all sentient beings. So the Buddhist teaching of conditioned co-arising implies that all existence are intrinsically linked, mutually conditioned, as I said earlier. When nature is made to lose its balance, we become sick accordingly. When nature restores health, we too come to be truly healthy. There's an important word in Buddhism here. That is called yoga shema. This is the term here. Yeah. Anwen in Chinese. That is true security. These days, people speak of lack of security, a sense of insecurity. The true security is true harmony and peace of mind. And that can only be achieved in a holistic, totalistic manner. Let me now, I think we have gone through over time. Yeah, we have a little bit left. So, yeah, we have come to the conclusion now. Perhaps I can slow down a little bit. I was running. The first point is from our discussion. Given the teaching of conditioned co-arising, which means that no existent, whether human, non-human. This is the Buddhist view. The Buddhist view is not just human-centered, world-centered, earth-centered, but it's a all-embracing view of the totality of existence. And existences, no existent can exist independently in an isolated manner. They are mutually conditioned, just like the waves and the great ocean. When even one wave moves, the whole ocean is impacted. When there is turbulence in the whole motion, each individual wave is affected accordingly. That is why when nature is sick, we cannot alone be healthy. So given this teaching of conditioned co-arising and emptiness, the need and responsibility of loving and caring for nature, I'm using this highlight, which is the theme of today's discussion. That loving and caring for nature, we can say, we can answer now, is in fact intrinsic to the Buddhist doctrinal system itself. Buddhists have no choice. It is within the doctrinal system. 2, we can have true security, that is to say, true health, true happiness, true peace, only when we strive to make nature well. When nature is sick, we too become sick necessarily. And that is the powerful message we should have got from reading the Vimalakirti discourse that I quoted just now. Finally, our collective responsibility is certainly of utmost urgency. We don't have much time left if we want to save mankind. But we need not despair. There are laws in nature that look after us, and we must be aware, we must learn to understand and apply and to conform to the laws of nature in this striving. From the perspective, particularly the Buddhist perspective of the karma doctrine, this is definitely, in other words, the solution is definitely a possibility. It's a definite possibility. So I think I have just slightly gone through the main points, and we have come to, I think, 30 minutes. And I'd like to thank you by way of concluding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Venerable Professor. Thank you, Venerable Professor Kl Dhammajoti. At least my take-home point here is dependent co-origination. Venerable focuses a lot on dependent co-origination. That is, what we do affects nature. And when nature is sick, we cannot be well. That is my take-home point from Venerable today. Anyway, it is that means we are part of nature. And I think it will be very parallel if we were to say, I think it is very parallel to what Professor Datuk has said earlier, that we are integral part of nature. We live with nature. Yeah. So with that, I think that is a similar path. We are going slightly different direction, but with the same cause, with the same goal, which we are saying that we are all part of nature. We must respect nature. We must give up greed to overcome nature. Ethical behavior. That's what our Venerable and our Professor Datuk Azizan has said. Yeah. So with that, now we shall move on to the Q&A session. So for the Q&A session, please use the raise hand function in Zoom to indicate that you wish to ask a question. The host will then request you to unmute, upon which you must click onto the microphone icon to unmute yourself. You may then verbally ask your question. After asking the question, the host will mute you, or you may mute yourself. You may also ask questions by using the chat function in Zoom. For our audience who are watching on Facebook Live, you may also post questions in the comments. But do note that priority will be given to those who ask questions verbally in the Zoom session. Okay. So with that, we open the floor for questions. So please use the raise hand icon for us to identify you. Do I see any raise hands yet? If not, then maybe I would like to. If not, then let me post some simple some questions to both Professor Datuk and Professor Venerable Kl Dhammajoti. Now, what do you think that we as lay people, as normal people, the general people can do to support learning and caring of nature? Maybe we will let Professor Datuk, Dr. Azizan help us first. What do you think the lay people like us, the general people, the normal people can do to support learning and caring of nature?
Okay, thank you so much, Abhidharma. I often ask that question myself. Every day, I try to work out what it is that I can do in a small way, in a big way. I think this is something that everybody like to think about as well. You know, we showed the slide just now about the plastic pollution and all of that, right? So most simply, we all work in offices, in institutions, in houses of worship, right? And we eat and drink, right? And most simply, do we still have to drink from the plastic bottles? And if we have to, what do we do with the plastic bottles? Is it so hard to get a glass container that is refillable, right? And some non-plastic glasses to drink from? And then in the house, our household wastes, is it so difficult to separate the organic from the non-organic? We might say that, these are minor things, but if you put millions of tons of waste from millions of households, right, then we get what we saw in the pictures. And we know in the oceans, for example, turtles, other sea creatures, they get, the plastic that is at the neck of the plastic bottle. encroaching on their necks, and they cannot grow, they cannot breathe properly. And then we know plastics become microplastics, they're ingested by fish, we eat the fish, and the plastic comes into our body. Exactly what have been described by Venerable just now. See, when nature is sick, then you cannot be healthy. So we are inseparable. So do we understand that? I think just to get that notion understood and then to be acted upon would be a tremendous victory on our part, you know, to address the situation. And then of course at the higher levels, policy making, economic decision making, we can do much more in terms of enacting laws or regulations, right? But then again, it's up to the so-called religious person, spiritually enlightened person, to actually do and act upon what they believe. Also already, I think explained by Venerable, and also I think I stress upon that point. But most critically, speaking as a Muslim, we believe that the CCTV of the Creator is on us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and will be taken to task later on. The Creator will ask us, what did you do? You know, did you do the right things or the wrong things? So this I think is not something familiar in the religious curriculum. But then it is something that is recent, but we also showed the Quranic verse. It is already spoken about in the book of Revelation. So we Muslims, for example, what are we waiting for, right? So you talk about conscience. We all have conscience. Do you not have conscience? Conscience is the secular word, if you like. But in the spiritual language, it is the heart. The heart does not lie. People can quarrel, where is the heart? Is it on your head? Is it in your chest? Where is it? But everybody knows, and again, scientific research is showing that the heart is actually more intelligent than the brain. You know, I don't want to make statements that are not verifiable. Why is it that I keep on talking about this? Because we face a world that sometimes say that, you know, many people in the world claim that they are religious, but what they do not seem to tally with what they say. Which means there's something in their minds that does not click yet. The spiritual and the worldly is still not harmonized. So for us Muslims, what you do here very much affects how you will be in the next life. If you don't do well here, the key word is do, you know. It's not simply like the Venerable also said, it's not just theory. You have to practice it. Hence the importance of the rituals. Rituals are being laughed at. Rituals are being laughed at. People laugh at rituals because they don't understand the meaning behind rituals. So I think what is critical for religious teachers is to actually explain the meaning behind rituals. I emphasize the word meaning because there's also the crisis of meaning in our life today. So I'll stop there. I think we should give a Venerable opportunity also to respond. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Datuk. Yeah, actually, yeah, I like that part when you say that people like us should do and not only say. I think that is the take home today. We should do and not only say. That's what Professor said. Yeah. Okay. Now let us hear from Venerable Professor Kl Dhamma.
Okay, I hope that we have both highlighted the importance of very first beginning point, the starting point, that is awareness. There must be awareness of the situation, of our dilemma, of the disaster. This is one thing. And I quite appreciate the point that we must act and not just think. Yeah. And that is why I say that the solution involves a total man. And I say the solution is a religious one in that sense. And in the sense of whatever religion we belong to, but religion in the true sense, in the existential sense, of involving man's sincere, fundamental response to the human predicament. And it's only when you come to the state when you're able to respond like this that you will be motivated to act accordingly and systematically. Then we can speak of a solution. And for Buddhism, there are concrete methods. What can we do? And of course, we can give many examples from the technical, scientific point of view, and Professor Azizan has given some, like avoiding plastic and so on. In Buddhism, there are concrete methods. For instance, talking about loving and caring, it's not a question of understanding what is called condition called arising, but the heart must be motivated, must be affected. Then action follows, and then these actions are very concrete. For example, we have the practice of loving kindness. Just now I quoted one sutra, one discourse, which sources to radiate boundless love to all living beings. And this all living beings, very interesting, not just human, not just enemy, but all inanimate being, the whole of nature as well. Yeah. So there are concrete methods. In fact, even steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How do you start doing loving kindness? Now, we have no time to go into detail, but let me assure you that you can find the concrete methods. A method of breathing, of becoming more aware that you don't exist alone, but in your breath, in your breathing, in your mindfulness, you are aware of the totality of things. Yeah. So there are. This is, for instance, anapanasati, vipassana, and there are concrete methods, and this is what perhaps Buddhism has to offer. Another thing is talking about involving the heart. That's a very, very important message. That's why I say the solution is a religious one, because heart must be involved. It's not a philosophical one. Yeah, it's not one of scientific theory either. In fact, they're all much necessary and have. I say necessary but not sufficient. So Buddhism emphasizes one aspect of motivating the heart. That is through aspiration and vow. There's a word for it called pranidhana, vowing, making vow. And this is a key concept of, for example, Mahayana Buddhism, the bodhicitta. You feel that you live in constant awareness that you have a mission. And that mission is to save yourself and nature. And that total salvation does not exclude yourself. It's not a question of sacrifice yourself for the sake of nature, for the sake of others. It's you and others cannot be separated. To save others is to save yourself. To benefit nature is to benefit yourself. That's what I was trying to talk about. Finally, a word. Let me speak a word about ritual that is highlighted by Professor Azizan. And again, I fully agree that people, like she said, people laugh at ritual and think that it is superstitious, it's irrational. Starting by people like Sigmund Freud and so on, highlighting that ritual is sickness, is neurotic. But fortunately, we have a group of psychoanalysts, psychologists, a humanistic one like Maslow and Carl Rogers and so on, and they highlight the importance of ritual in the development of human being, in the unfolding of the human potential. Particularly, I like to emphasize for instance, we know that Maslow speaks of the actualization of man. Yeah, so the whole potentiality must be progressively unfolded. That is religion in the true sense. Of course, it can take a particular form. It may be Muslim, it may be Buddhist, it may be Christian. These are particular forms of it. But the essence of it is the unfolding of human potential to the highest. And because time is short, I share with you his analysis of ritual. He says that ritual is extremely important, but he makes a distinction between rational and irrational ritual. Okay, so irrational nature, anything irrational, of course, is not healthy. Sure, it is basically neurotic. But there is the very important, what you might call religious or spiritual significance of rational ritual. And he defines like this. I'm just speaking out of my mind. I might miss one of the words. Something to this effect. It is a shared action, expressive of a common striving, rooted in common values. So it's first of all an action, something to do, You don't invite the ritualist and follow a menu and just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or let other do for you and you pay for it. And I think this is in some circle, for instance, of the Chinese Buddhist community. That's a wrong understanding. Actually, the ritual must be done for yourself, and that very doing is a practice. It's a meditative practice. What happened is, okay, action, ritual is a shared action. So you do it collectively. You invoke, you inspire collective common inspiration. This is the first thing. In doing it, in the very doing of it, right? And that is an expression of common values. That is to say, the externalization of the aspiration, the vow, for instance, now today, the need to help nature to be restored to harmony. Yeah. So if you have that, if you get a message from this conference, yeah, if you have a sense of mission, you must actualize it. And there must be a concrete method. And ritual is a method. So when you do the ritual, you are externalizing your inner yearning, inner aspiration for the welfare of nature and yourself, of humanity. Yeah. And this, so shared action, expressive of common value, expressive of common striving. It's a striving, it's action rooted in common values. So I think it is an excellent definition given by a psychologist, a great thinker like Prof. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Venerable Professor. Thank you so much. Yeah, we will take it as awareness is a very important criteria here. And also, like Venerable has stressed very strongly, the shared action, experience of common inspiration and rooted in common values, which are actually parallel to what Professor Datuk has said, do and not just say. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to the questions in the Zoom chat. I have a question here. Anyway, if at any time we feel that this answers has already been answered somewhere else, please just we can ignore. We can skip the question. Yeah. So the question here is Dr. Azizan. Ironically, it is the religious people who oftentimes ignore the impact of climate change. So how to reconcile both the man-centered view, mostly modern Western view, and life-centered view, mostly religious or pre-modern Western view, to resolve the climate change? Can modern science be the common language between the two? This question is directed to Professor Dato' Azizan.
Thank you so much for the question. Einstein once said, without religion, science is blind. And without science, religion is lame. Now, please don't get upset. Religious people, please don't get upset with Einstein. I think what he meant was that religion, critical as it is, oftentimes needs to be contextualized. So I think religious teachers are doing fine. They are teaching principles of religious belief. So we need them to be pure, quote unquote, in terms of their teachings. Yeah, let's not burden them with now having the latest scientific knowledge about climate change, for example. Whose job is that to tell us about what's wrong in the world in physical terms? That would be the scientist's job. But the difference here is that there has to be mutual acceptance and mutual respect between these two groups, the scientists and the religious teachers. If you can get both types of knowledge, well imbued in the one and same person, that's good. But sometimes that's difficult to achieve. So that is why we need to meet like this, where we put together side by side scientific knowledge, yeah, as well as religious knowledge. Take the best of both and harmonize it. The word is not to equalize, the word is not to flatten out, the word is to harmonize scientific knowledge and religious knowledge. And that's why I keep repeating empirical verification. Now, it is not a high and mighty scientific ruling, this word empirical. It means having recourse to experiences that your senses can experience. Like, okay, people always say, believe in the ghaib, believe in the unseen, yeah, which is what, let's say for Muslims, you cannot see God, so God cannot be real because you cannot see God. You want to see God with your eyes, you cannot see God with your eyes. But then the word see has to be demystified. Okay? Experiencing God is something that is you cannot discuss it in purely empirical terms. That there has to be, it is a meta level, it's a deeper level. But nevertheless, you still have the heart. You still have the organ called the heart. Yeah, but the heart is both physical and spiritual. So this is, I think, what religious teachers are trying to get at. Look at your heart, look at the state of your heart. And we Muslims believe that if the heart is pure, if a person concentrates on purifying his heart, and this is what religious rituals are aimed to do, to purify your heart. If you do the rituals with meaning, then your heart will be receiving guidance from the Almighty. Now, all that is religious language, which is very difficult for people who are not in tune with that kind of thinking to accept. So that's why we go to Maslow, right? I think Venerable also mentioned Maslow. Maslow did not claim he was from any religious group. He did his work totally based on empirical knowledge, just based on the senses that everybody has. And so he came up with this hierarchy. How come he said that a person can only realize his true potential, right, after all his needs have been met? So this is something that spiritual leaders must understand, perhaps, that if a person is poor, if a person is not educated, if a person is illiterate, is perpetually hungry, dirty, then he will not be in the condition to accept the best religious enlightenment. So that's why we must work from the bottom up and top bottom as well. So I think for Muslims, it's an imperative. There's a Makasih Sharia, it talks about economic wealth. Why is economic wealth, economic sustenance important? Because without it, a person cannot pray properly. Without it, a person cannot think properly. So what I'm getting at is just now the question is, how do you get religious teachers to understand the facts of climate change? By, first of all, scientists who know about climate change talking and explaining things to the religious teacher. And the religious teachers or religious leaders themselves have to actually acknowledge the fact that books of revelation, the verses of revelation, verses of the Quran for Muslims, for example, has to be thought about, has to be contextualized. Like I use the verse 30, verse Ar-Rum, Surah Ar-Rum, chapter Ar-Rum, verse 41. Fasad is clearly in the air, in the water, on land, because of the hands of men. And God really deliberately make us feel the consequences of that, so that we might turn back. Can we actually understand that chapter fully, that ayat fully from that chapter, if we don't understand the facts of climate change, for example? So I would very, 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 very humbly ask my so-called fellow science friends with science background, climate change background, to have discourses with so-called religious leaders. And there are many, 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 many religious leaders who on their own also are aware of all these scientific evidences. So the key word here is dialogue, I guess, and a lowering of the ego. What we often see also is a kind of snobbery, intellectual snobbery on both sides. One side will say, oh, you do not know about science, and the other side will say, no, you do not know about religion. So I think both are in error, spiritually speaking. And I think the bottom line is the purification of the heart. If our hearts are pure and we aim for nothing but enlightenment, and for Muslims to be close to what the Creator asks us to do, then we would have no hang-ups. What is the problem? If a person don't understand, make him understand. If he behaves as if he is putting you down, then that is your own pure bad perception. Yeah? Suuzon, I mean, you think negatively of the other, and this is a dosa. This is misguided behavior as far as Muslims concerned. So to be religious is actually to have good akhlaq, to have good morality, to have good ethics, to have good behavior. This is critical in Islam. The Prophet is sent to make better the akhlaq, the behavior of human beings. And he is sent as a rahmah for the whole universe. This is what Muslims believe. So the question is, why aren't religious leaders, I'm talking about all, maybe one or two, perhaps, I don't know, maybe misguided, perhaps, I don't know. Why can't we believe in that and practice that? Again, keyword is practice. Keyword is don't look at other people. The Prophet said, judge yourself before you are judged. Weigh yourself before you are weighed. In other words, you must always be looking at yourself. And I think this is not something difficult for everybody to understand, you know. And it's just that it is not emphasized. Someone asked a leader, what is the heart of education? And she said, education of the heart. You must tarbiyah your heart first. You must educate your heart first. And how do you do that? Through religious practices and theory and practice. So I think I'll stop there, Brother Tan.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Datuk Azizan. That was very enlightening. Yeah, you have quoted, without science, religion is blind. Without religion, science is lame. I think that is very, very true. I think that is where science and religion, like what we're having a dialogue today, science and religion must come to some agreement somewhere. Yeah. And then these rituals that we do, like what Venerable Professor Kl Dhammajoti has said, these rituals, some are rational rituals, some are irrational rituals. So don't just say that we want to believe things that we can see. Sometimes we experience them. That's what our Professor Dato has said. Yeah, if I've understood you correctly. Thank you so much. Okay, the next question we have. Next question in the chat group we have is directed to Dr. Venerable Dhammajoti. Okay, the question is, I think Dr. Azizan's use for life-centered view better reflects Buddha's teaching than human-centric view. The sixth extinction due to man-made climate change, which has caused the demise of many non-human species or lives on Earth, should be something very alarming for Buddhists in the first place. It is exactly this human-centric interpretation of the Buddha's teaching that give rise to many Buddhist ignorance of the impact of climate change. Do you agree with me?
I think this partly to be just a comment, but there's a question towards the end of it. And yes. I may not fully agree, I'm afraid. Buddhism, the Buddha has explained the human predicament, human situation. He explained what is called dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, has analyzed the very cause or causes of unsatisfactoriness of this predicament, has declared that there is indeed a transcendence of this predicament, has finally offered a very concrete actual path leading to that transcendence. Yeah? So many, so of course the Buddhists are human beings, just like even Muslim, even Christians, and even the so-called scientists. They all have the different views, different understanding, and there will be some misunderstanding. Yeah, but I have emphasized one thing that Buddhism tells us to cultivate towards the experience of no selfness. That no selfness is very, or expressed in terms of emptiness, is very often misunderstood. Yeah? It doesn't mean that emptiness doesn't mean the denial of all existent phenomena, for example. It's not even the denial of the individual. So likewise, for the doctrine of no self doesn't deny the individual in the empirical sense. There is the self that moves on the experiences, but that self, according to Buddhism, is a conditioned one, conditioned by all factors that give rise to this phenomena called yourself. And this factors involved, not the intellect, not just the brain, but your feeling. We're talking about a lot today like this. Feeling, your emotion, your aspiration, your volitions, and so on, the so-called five aggregate five skandhas. So the Buddhist path is a process part of transforming that. And the ideal is one of universal emancipation. As I say, that does not exclude yourself, but that must begin with yourself. If you cannot care for yourself, you can't care for nature. Conversely, if you don't learn to care for nature, you cannot care for yourself. But then you are the concrete existence yourself, and yourself is more concrete to you, in other words. And you have to start with yourself, your own frustration, your own. These days, there's a very common, very popular word called depression. After I have come to Hong Kong, I realized that Buddhists are talking a lot of depressions, and they say they come into Buddhism because of depression. They want to find a solution to it. Often I think that this kind of a mentality, this kind of psychological state, I say not absolutely, not always, but often, is, I'm afraid, the result of the taking over of Western kind of mentality, Western kind of value that I hinted at in my sharing. Yeah, and you know, yourself being the most important. You're not a true individual. You're just individualistic. As I must be good, and my good must be exclusive to the good of others. If I gain more money, I hope my neighbor will collapse. The next company will collapse. Now, it's not that kind of individuality. I think that kind of negative individuality is very much a part of the Western value system. I'm not anti-West, I must say that, but I see that as a very, very important source of our problems. And this applies to the whole issue of ecological imbalance also. You know, you want this system to be okay, to be fine, to the exclusion of another system. The person is a system. Your neighbors, your families, your society, these are all different systems. A world, this world, that world, this domain of existence of sentient beings like humans, and other domain like animals and so on, they're all different systems. Yeah. So if each system cares and love and learns to love only that individual and cannot broaden that system, in Buddhism we say, you know, the ideal is to broaden it to totality. Yeah, then there is no true harmony. So, however, the message is that you must begin with your system. You yourself learn to love and accept yourself. And many problems today, mental problems, because human beings cannot learn to accept themselves. With all your imperfections, we are all imperfect. We cannot expect, we are not enlightened beings. We are not Buddhas, we are not Bodhisattvas, you know, we are not Arhats. Accept ourselves as we are, but we have a committed goal. Common good, common peace, common health. Yeah, and not only the goal, but a path. You know, just talking about action, yes, we must act, we must feel the heart, but how to act? So to be aware also, you know, today you learn to, you might learn to be aware. I hope that is at least the outcome of this conference, if not more, to highlight the awareness. But being aware is not enough. Your awareness will be lost tomorrow, for example. So there must be ways to cultivate constant awareness to it. Yeah. So what I was trying to say in my sharing is that Buddhism offers a perspective of very concrete methods like meditation, extremely important. Without meditation, all talks about involving the heart, all talk of the need of actions from the Buddhist point of view will not be very helpful, because however much you know you want, you should do, you can do, but you can't do. You don't do. Yeah. So in other words, what is the solution? The solution is to transform your consciousness within, starting from yourself. And to transform it, there's no other way than meditation. That's why meditation is central to the Buddhist path. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. So we'll go to the raise hands question. We have got very limited time, so we will try to answer 2 or 3 questions from the raise hands. Okay, for the first question, let us invite Dr. Muhammad to speak up, please. Dr. Muhammad, please unmute yourself and ask a question directly, after which please mute yourself.
Yes.
We can't hear you, Dr. Muhammad.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you, Prof. Dr. Azizan, and Venerable Professor Dr. Dhammajoti. Thank both of you. I think, well, very generally, I have just 2 points, which lead to 2 questions. Number one is that both speakers speaking in the context of Al-Ghazali's Mazra'a. Mazra'a here meaning the concept of cultivation sphere, cultivation land, like Ad-Dunya Mazra'atul Akhirah. So now conceptually, both Islam and Buddhism, so regardless of their perceived sources by their adherents, so they have come together to deliver a universal message. And that universal message is the concept of do to others what you want others to do to you. So others here underlined, so includes the nature. So whatever we do to nature, we expect back from nature. So now the nature, from the speech of the both, I understand that it is our collective responsibility to safeguarding the nature, to preserve the nature. It is all our collective responsibility, whether we are Muslims or Buddhists or whatever else. So, and to protect this, it requires collective efforts. But now, how do we settle down with our individual misinterpretation of our religious responsibility towards nature? So this is, so how do we harmonize our human nature in order to achieve our climatic collective responsibilities? So that is one. Point number 2 here is our talks here, many talks like this in conference, webinars are this. They are mostly on intellectual level. They do not practically translate to individuals down the street in the markets. So now, how do we translate all this down to individuals on the street, in the market, in the society, in our compound? So these, I think, are my 2 points for both. Thank you.
Who shall answer first? Venerable Professor Datuk? Oh, sorry, Professor Datuk?
Okay, thank you very much for the wonderful comment and also question. I think go straight away to the last question being posed, how to translate all our theories and action plans down to the level of individuals. I think back to the fundamental principle, if you claim yourself to be religious, then you have certain duties. And what is that duty? To be true to what you believe in. So the Muslim, when they pray 5 times a day, every time they pray, they say, Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alamin. My prayer and my life is for Allah only. And when they say that, do they realize that it means that doing the right and proper thing? And it has already been established that doing right to the environment is the proper thing, is the religious thing to do as well. So ibadah, or our service to the Creator, includes not only the rituals, but also our everyday life activities. So okay, you say like if you go to the market, how do you practice it in the market? Okay, if you are a seller of things, stop using plastic containers to sell your goods. If you are a buyer, a customer, stop using plastic bags to carry your goods home. Carry a bag made from cloth or something that is decomposable, right? Okay, at a slightly higher level, we pay zakat, and Muslims are very good at giving infaq or charity. They call it wakaf. Yeah. Recently in Malaysia, the ministry in charge of the environment and water has promoted this idea of wakaf for water. wakaf air, which means you can contribute money that will go into assisting projects that can either preserve water or find water for people who are in need, etc. So this is like translating your so-called religious beliefs into reality, into real life. When you shower in the morning, how much water do you use? I'm sorry to have to be, like in the words of the Venerable, so statistical, so measurable. Because people want to see evidences, they want to hear about tangible things to do. Well, these are the tangible things to do. So stop asking the question of how can we help? There's so many things you can help with. There's so many manuals. You can Google the stuff that you can do. Save electricity. Those who waste are the sahabats of shaitan, the friends of shaitan. That's what the Quran says. How much do we waste in everything? I've just read a paper last night that talks about the millions of tons of food being wasted in Ramadan, for heaven's sakes, in so-called countries that claim to be religious. So what's going on there? So you see, it's very easy to look around and say what is not good with the others, but look at yourself and what good have you done. And scientifically speaking, if you have a pond and you throw a little bit small piece of stone inside the pond, you will see ripples. Immediately around the stone, the ripples are quite huge and visible, but later on, believe it or not, the ripples spread out. You don't even see it in the last stages, but it covers the whole pond. So similarly, every good deed that you do actually impacts your environment. I think this can be explained spiritually as well as scientifically, but we don't have time today, but believe in it. Believe that other people have worked on this. It does work. Okay, how many people are zooming in our conference today? 400, 500, 1,000. So if this individual do something small, believe it or not, it will spread. The goodness will spread. How will it spread? Other people will be looking at you. Your children will be following your example. So let's not make that question a big headache, because we are running around asking that question. If you like, if you're interested, brother, you can Google the Islamic Declaration for Climate Change. You didn't have time just now, but in my slides towards the end, there are the do's and don'ts. And it all started with the Prophet himself. He gazetted areas that are forbidden to be destroyed. He gazetted areas for people to use the resources from it, for example. So I think all in all, I'd like to say this with the greatest humility, because I'm sure my knowledge is just so little. Yeah, there is so much in the literature that we can look at, and why can't part of this literature be explained to the audience during khutbah time, when you have lectures in your houses of worship? Why can't the so-called religious leaders, they can probably request from their scientist friends to have some information that they can share. So, and the understanding all along is that doing good to nature is an ibadah, is a form of religious service. Isn't this the important thing? So the here and now, the Anthropocene is here. We have done damage. When I say we, the human species, then you can say, no, it's not me. Yeah, but then you have been consuming all these things all the time yourself. And that's why it's no use designating the West versus me versus the West. No, we are all part of it, because everything that you buy, that you use, that you eat, that you consume comes from the same market that is actually dominant in the world today. So we are part of that worldview that we don't like. So we have to start small, big, medium, up to you. But I think most critical is we don't hurt each other, we don't make each other angry towards each other. You understand that? That is the most important thing. To begin with, let's make peace with each other, make peace with ourselves. Don't stop blaming. The Venerable keeps saying, don't give up, don't blame yourself. Don't blame yourself. So for me, how does a Muslim do that? I was just reading Surah Al-Ahzab this morning. Remember Allah always. The Buddhists might use the word meditation, I don't know. But for Muslims, zikirullah. Remember Allah. Praise Allah. So this is what people don't understand. Why do you say astaghfirullahalazim all the time? And does that work? Yes, it works. Try it. Yeah. So I'm talking about religious principles in a manner I think that is very, very layman. As a person who believes in Islam, what do? I try to practice. I try to understand. So I think this is the best that we can do. And along the way, if you've got knowledge about the environment, how to help them, do it. and believe. And if you can't believe, you are not impressed, you can ask people who can explain it to you. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Datuk. I think for the interest of time, we shall now invite Venerable Geshe Tashi Sering to ask a question. Please unmute yourself, Venerable Geshe Tashi Sering. You are muted.
Yes,
Yes.
I have. Thank you. So my question is to both of previous speakers. And I totally agree, both spiritual traditions have beautiful, profound teachings and messages, and both traditions, true practitioner, put into practice. I have no doubt on that. But how can we take those beautiful and profound message and practices to the outside our spiritual traditions, to the common people? If we are more or less quite clear, if we use or say quote from Quran or quote from Buddha's teaching, then go to the common people, this will not quite clear, this will not work. What is the solution to take to the university, to take to the college, to take to the school, those beautiful messages? What is the means and methods to take those beautiful messages without quoting the Quran or the sutras? Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable. So we will direct this question to Venerable Professor Kl Dhamma, and then we shall end this Q&A session because we are back to back with the next program. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the common thread to the Venerable question and not to the previous question is a question of common platform or common language, right? One, common to the scientists and the so-called religionists, common to the the meditators and those who are deep into their religions, and also to the so-called outsiders, the word they used by the Venerable. Yeah. Now, early on, somebody has suggested that the scientific language can be the common language. I cannot agree with that. And in fact, in some form of so-called scientific language, it can be essentially anti-religious. Yeah, but rather than therefore emphasizing on the commonality of the scientific language, I think we should emphasize on the commonality of the religious experience of all human beings, whether scientists or religionists, whether specialists or folks on the street. Yeah, the heart is the same. Okay, human existence is the same. Human existence is, if you're human, you exist as a human being. You can't escape that. Whether you are a common man outside, or whether you are a monk or nun, whether you follow this particular religion, or whether you say I don't need religion, which according to from you is wrong, because religion, the need of religion is rooted in the very existence of each human is sentient being. Yeah, you can't escape it. The only choice you have is to choose which kind of religion that suits you. Yeah, that helps you. But you can say no. I'm clever. I'm intelligent. I'm scientific, and I don't need religion. Only the emotionally fragile people need religion. You can't say that because it's rooted in your own in man's very existence itself. So therefore, I think if you speak of common language, common experience, is not the specific forms of this language, that language, whether it's the Quran, whether the Buddhist scripture, whether it's the Bible, and so on, but the very innate experience of human being, that which no human being can escape when you exist. Yeah, and this is the experience. So to be religious, I was trying to say, and in fact I'm largely quoting from, but I'm added perhaps some of my own comments, that true religiosity consists of not going to the temple and bowing to the Buddhas or praying in front of in a church or wherever, but consists in man's deep, sincere response to man's own, I'm sorry I use the word man, I don't mean to be a male chauvinist, the human predicament. You feel it's so, the question of where I go, what is the purpose of my existence, how am I related to nature, how am I related to all sentient beings, so deeply that you make a sincere response. And that response must be a systematic one. In that way, there is no outsider, no common man. No one is common, no one outside or inside. Yeah, it applies. When your heart is touched like this, even if you are uneducated, you feel that the predicament of human existence, the predicament of human beings. Yeah, even a beggar can feel that. A scientist also needs religion in that sense, in the Freudian sense, because he needs a frame of orientation to orientate within. And he has a goal, he has some committed values to achieve. Yeah, so I think the important point is to appeal to the true religiosity, not in an institutional sense, but in the existential sense. To appeal to the heart must move in this way. Then that is the language. And that language, of course, in practical terms, can take different forms. So you can, for instance, follow the Quran, you can follow the Buddhist scripture, you can follow the Bibles, and so on. But it must not be just at the institutional, superficial level. It must be at the level of the heart, must be at the level of a human existence.
Thank you, Venerable Professor Kl Dhammajoti, and I hope that answers your question, Venerable Geshe. Okay, we do not have much time left. Actually, we have moved into the other session time already. So with that, I think we shall end our session by saying thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of you for logging in and for following our program. And now I hand over this platform back to the MC of the whole program. Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Tan Leng Huat, and also our speakers, Professor Dr. Azizan binti Baharudin and Venerable Professor Dr. Kl Dhammajoti, for a wonderful and insightful session. I'm sure everyone enjoyed listening to their points. I am now pleased and excited to announce that our next session will be the inaugural opening address. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is currently based at Dharamsala, North India, is not able to attend this online conference as his whole office, including the audio-visual team, is in lockdown mode due to the recent COVID-19 surge in that part of India. Nevertheless, we are delighted to inform that his representative, the Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul, will be able to attend and address the inaugural opening session. We will also have an introduction by Emeritus Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar of ISTAC IIUM, and the session will be moderated by Dr. Awani Kazali of University of Malaya. So now our guests and VIPs for that inaugural address have arrived and taken their places. I'll now hand over to my co-MC, Mr. Adli Zakwan, to continue the conference program for the inaugural opening session. Over to you, Brother Adli.
Thank you, Brother Chong. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon all you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, to the inaugural opening session of the IBED Conference 2022. As shared by Brother Chong, we will be having the inaugural opening address by Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul, representative of the Chief Guest of His Holiness Dalai Lama, very shortly. While waiting for him to join us, we would like to take this opportunity to invite some of our distinguished guests and participants who are coming from diverse backgrounds of faith, expertises, and also geography to share their views and thoughts on the theme that is being discussed today. And first, I don't want to delay, I would like to invite the Archbishop of Kuala Lumpur, the Most Reverend Archbishop Julian Leo, to unmute his microphone and share his view, particularly on the Christianity perspective on protection of the environment. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to all of you. perhaps different time zones in different parts of the world. I'm very privileged to be here. I'm the Archbishop, the Catholic Bishop of Kuala Lumpur, and privileged to just share a little bit on the Christian view of care for the environment. I think it's also in our Bible, in our scriptures. In Genesis, God made the heavens and the earth, and everything is good. Humans are commanded to care for God's creation. In Leviticus also, the land itself must be given a rest and not abused. Deuteronomy, all of heaven and earth belong to the Lord. And also the Psalms speak about all the earth, the world, and all that it contains belongs to God. So, my dear friends, I think most of our scriptures also speaks about caring for the environment. I'd just like to touch, I know I've only got 2 minutes, that Pope Francis, in his encyclical Laudato Si, which is on the environment, praise be to you, O Lord. He has set out, I think, quite extensively, I was hearing just now, not just theological, cultural, ethical, moral principles, but practical things that we as humanity can do. So basically, an ecological conversion is needed. And what does this mean? It's a transformation of the heart and mind towards a greater love of God, of one another, and of creation. And this process of acknowledging our contribution to the social and ecological crisis that we are in, and acting in ways to nurture this communion, that is by healing and renewing our common home, our only home. Thank you for this opportunity to share. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Archbishop Julian. And next, may I invite Ms. Tina Gill. So it's interesting because Ms. Tina Gill is an independent filmmaker and journalist based in New Delhi, India, with an academic background in gender development studies, and she had conducted quite a number of interesting documentaries, and one of it is about independency. So I guess probably will be it's our honor to invite you, Ms. Tina, to share your thoughts on this, on your insight on this topic. Please unmute your mic and floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a filmmaker, and to me the theme of interbeing actually has been very central more recently in my work, because I feel more than ever before that without an understanding of how the human beings and how human as the humans as a species, because actually we are another form of species on this planet, and until we understand how deeply we are connected to all other sentient and non-sentient beings, there's no way, I feel, in which we can actually address the deep problems which face us today on this planet, and which face our planet and all life on this earth. I feel that actually I wanted very much the film to also look through poetry. It's not actually a documentary, but to communicate in ways which are different, so that we can actually come across to other people and share with them what I feel is right now such an important issue. Scientists, as we have been discussing in the last session, have also been allowing us more recently to understand issues which we have never been able to understand before. Science has caused many problems in the past, but on the other hand, more recently, it's allowed us to look more deeply at aspects of this earth which few of us knew so much about. The fact that trees actually communicate with each other, that trees support each other, and they help the weakest to survive. The fact that fungi are able to solve complex problems without a brain and can connect their perception with action without having a specific place in which to do this. Plants also do this, and unlike animals which have one brain, they have numerous decision-making paths. But our narrow, cerebrocentric frameworks have not allowed us to understand this. Through the film, I also want to explore the spiritual traditions that push our boundaries. Buddhism, interbeing, is extremely central to all Buddhist thought and philosophy. Sufism, Advaita, which stems from Vedanta in Hinduism, all of these deeply look at how we are not separate from the humans, from other species on this planet. In this way, we understand also and challenge our concepts of birth and death, and our inability to understand that, like other forms of life, we depend on water, on the air, the earth, the minerals, and the sun to survive. All other forms of life on this planet, like us, are deeply connected to these elements. Without them, we cannot be, and without us, they cannot be. So we need to open our minds to actually unlearn what we have learned through our educational systems, through our societies, in order to form a new way of learning and see how deeply we are part of the natural world. So I'm hoping that I will be able to do this through this film on interbeing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nagil, for your interest and support in joining this conference, despite of being quite an early from New Delhi. Thank you so much for your view. And next, I would like to invite Associate Professor Kamaonia to get a view and probably look into the influence of religion in society and how it can help in promotion of the protection of the environment. Over to you, Prof. Dr. Kamaonia.
Thank you very much, everybody. Can you hear me? Am I heard? Yes. Because, okay, thank you. It's been very interesting, this contributions, and I follow it seriously, although I was able to come in a little bit late, but managed to follow up most of the previous discussions. Since I have only 2 minutes or more or less, I'll go straight to what was assigned to me, a title. The title was The Influence of Religion in Society and How It Can Help in Promotion of the Protection of the Environment. Of course, this is fundamental to our whole discussion, and it presupposes, the title presupposes that religion has a role in society, that religion and society is intertwined in a way. I will only bring up 2 aspects in this discussion for these 2 minutes. One is the mission of the prophets and the founders of religion, and then the second point is on the definition of existence. At the level of the mission of the prophets, if you look into history, the coming of the prophets, the founders of religion, the teachers, each religion has its own understanding of who brought the religion. They came at that fundamental time in human history where humanity was in deep crisis. A lot of injustice was going on, and they were sort of commissioned to address the issue of humanity. So they set about to repair, to reset humanity into a new direction that can help to make life better for one and all. And at that point of time, it was about the humanity aspect. But it is also covering the non-human aspect as well. So these prophets, founders of religion, teachers, they started with the person. And this is called the transformation of the individuals. And what has been discussed before is this promotion of the individual. Conversion took place, and that's what we call convert. The person transformed from what he was to be another person after he accepted the system. And that means the conversion of the heart, the conversion of the mind, the conversion of personality, the conversion of worldview, direction, the conversion of value system towards a new one that was formed. The prophets, the founders, they were lonely people in the beginning. And it was a tough struggle. So if they had the share of the difficulties, let's not hope that we didn't have it and easy time with that. But if we developed this group of people who was able to emulate that type of personality that was ready to transform society. They translated the transformation into the reformation of society. So they came out value systems, thought patterns, right and wrong, good and right, as emulated by the teachings of the prophets, and as they have personalized it into their life and they translated it into society. And so a new society was transformed with new value systems, with new vision and mission, and so the humanity of that time was repaired. And this humanity, this new humanity, eventually developed into civilization. So we have in the past, almost all the civilizations in the past was more or less based on some kind of religious background or spiritual background. So the civilizations of the past had a soul. Unfortunately, as I see it, personally I see it, our contemporary civilization, when we step into this modern age and we marginalize religion, our civilization is what I call a soulless civilization. A civilization without soul. And by soul, it includes the heart, what Prof. Dr. Azizan had been talking and what our representative from the students. So we have lost it in that point. So we really transformation, conversion of the individual, the intrapersonal aspect transformation into the interpersonal aspect of transformation, repairing humanity, and then we move onwards. So that includes the environment. But the second point I want to raise is definition. All religions give definitions of what a human being is, of what existence is. Basically, it's about body, mind, and soul. And in Buddhism, they have the aggregates, skandhas, or the khandhas, defining humanity. Religions explain who a human being is. And from there, you can become to act as a human being. But modern civilization, that's not give any start. Even in education, I used to raise this in international conference. What is education and for whom is education? If it is for human beings, then we have to come to the point of understanding what is a human being. If we don't understand what a human being is, how can you devise educational system that will fit into the human being? Okay, so the definitions are given by religion. Now, other than the definition of what and who a human being is, religion also defines what existence is. In the context of existence, almost all religions I should say, unless of course I overlook certain, talk about the interrelatedness of existences.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Unfortunately, yeah. Can yeah.
Is time up?
Yeah.
Okay, let me
yes.
Let me just point this out. This is important. This interrelatedness and responsibility is what encapsulated by religion. So we have missed in the understanding of what religion is. We have lost the holistic understanding of religion, and we have made it very ritualistic and personalized. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Dr. Kl for that insight, and of course, holistic understanding of the religion is something that would be one of our solution at the end of the conference. And next, we have heard from the Christianity part and from the Muslims, but now may I invite Madam Gauri Tanggaya from Malaysia Hangam to please unmute your microphone and kindly share the relationship between Hinduism and environment and the importance of protecting it. Madam Gauri?
Vanakkam.
Yep. Over to you.
Yes, can everyone hear me? Okay, dear all, good greetings to everyone. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words in this esteemed conference. Let me share a few words on the relationship between Hinduism and environment and the importance of protecting it from the Hinduism perspective. One of our teachings saying, the earth is our mother and we are all the children. So ancient religious Hindu texts, especially the Rig Veda, particularly Upanishads, explains the deep connections between human beings and the environment. Nature is an integral part of Hinduism and it serves as a bridge between humans and the environment. Yeah. By using rituals to mark the rhythm of the season changes, to express gratitude for a bountiful harvest, and pray to keep away destructive natural forces, right? All religions, as we have heard from morning, teach that humans are the caretakers of this planet Earth. So let me quickly quote 10 Hindu environmental teachings. The earth is seen as a manifestation of the goddess and must be treated with respect. Second, the 5 elements, space, air, fire, water, and earth, are the foundations of an interconnected web of life. The Dharma, often translated as duty in Hinduism, and our responsibility.
We lost you, Ms. Gauri. We lost you for a while. Can you try to speak again?
Oh,
can you unmute? Yeah. Okay, yeah. You're back now, yeah.
Right. All right, I just continue, right? I said just now, Dharma, often translated as our duty, can be interpreted to include our responsibility to care and protect the earth. Simple living is a model for development of sustainable economies. Our treatment of nature directly affects our karma. Our behavior towards the environment has karmic consequences. The earth, the Mother Earth, Devi, is a goddess and our mother and deserves our devotion and protection. Hinduism, Tantric, and Yogic traditions affirm the sacredness of material reality and contain the teachings and practice to unite people with divine energy. Belief in reincarnation supports a sense of interconnectedness of all creations. Non-violence, the ahimsa, is the greatest dharma. Sannyasa represents a path to liberation and it's good for earth. As what Venerable Professor Dhammajoti explained about meditation. So all religions speak the same language when it comes to environment. And very good sharing was done in the morning by the speakers as well as all those who shared their concerns. And it is now time to put these things to work. As someone said, how do we bring it to the people? How all religions in our country can work together, effort to bring the awareness about how do we protect the nature, the religion, through the religious perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gauri, for that shares on the perspective of Hinduism. And then, of course, it's great to know that other religions basically, have the same values of like Islam and Buddhism when it comes to protection of the environment. And now, if I may invite Venerable Singkan, who can please share, expand further on the relationship between environment and diseases from the Buddhist perspective, as was shared by the previous speakers, particularly from the scientific perspective. But now we would like to listen more about the Buddhist perspective on such link between environment and diseases. Please, over to you, Venerable Singkan.
Yeah, thank you. So, good morning to everybody. Now, we know that environment, that means our surrounding things affects the human health. And we also know that environmentally, we are facing issues like pollution, global warming, waste disposal, deforestation, and other diseases that due to environment. So in Buddhism, as the professor has mentioned, a dependent coexistence, which is one of the basic doctrine of Buddhism, where everything is interrelated. Now, all beings and all phenomena, including the Mother Earth, we are interconnected. As mentioned earlier, if we are sick, the earth is sick. If the earth is sick, we will be sick. So, and another basic doctrine of Buddhism is the law of karma, where it means the intentional good and evil actions. Yeah, if we are immoral, or we do something bad, or we destroy the Mother Earth, the same effect will come to us. What we do, it will come to us, whether it's good or bad. So these two doctrinal basic doctrine of Buddhism, which is very important. Now we come back to, with a very common values to, say, human being or religion. That is compassion and loving kindness. Compassion means when you see somebody suffering, you would like to help, like to go forth and help to ease suffering. The same thing. We know the earth, we know that the Mother Earth is been hurt or destroyed. That's why there are so many environmental issues happening, like that we say global warming, pollution to water, air, which also affect human health. So compassion and loving kindness, to love the earth, love the Mother Earth, to love everyone, you see, which is very common. Is very common to all religions, and I think these two values, if we put into practice, besides knowing the theoretical part of knowledge, scientific knowledge, religious knowledge, that is knowledge. But we still, the most important thing is how to apply it practically. Therefore, I would advise, people to develop compassion and loving kindness to sentient beings and to the earth and to the Mother Earth. Starts from the individual. And of course, everyone is responsible to protect the world, including, as we said, religion, NGOs, the government, institutes. So thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Venerable Singkan, for that insightful on this topic. And then, unfortunately, due to the time, we have actually lined up quite a number of other great participants who can join us to share more about the practical aspect of it, as we have heard the conceptual concept of the protection environment. But we have to shorten it up. I will then now invite the last participant to share his thought. Ustazah Liana Rosli, who is the head of Harmony Center, who is also the first female leading the Interfaith Center in Singapore. So Ustazah Liana, please share, unmute yourself and share about Harmony Center, about the work, and also especially some of the activities that you have conducted related to environment, particularly with regards to interfaith approaches. Thank you. Over to you, Ustazah Liana Rosli. Unmute yourself. Tak dengar?
Me right now?
Yes.
Okay, yes, okay. So good morning, everyone, respected scholars and esteemed leaders. I'm very honored that I'm able to stand on the shoulders of giants today. So I am Ustazah Liana. I'm currently the head of Harmony Center. So Harmony Center is a key initiative, one of the key initiatives under the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore. That majority of the work that we do is to look at the welfare of the Muslims community. But for the Harmony Center in particularly, we oversee the initiatives that we done both for the Muslims community and also the other faith communities. So we do have a physical center that's actually located in a mosque where we help to create awareness on the true teachings of Islam and also about how the different religions in Singapore are able to bridge our relationship with peace and harmony. We've existed since 2006 and we have more than 75,000 people coming to the center. One thing that I'm really grateful of course, we've run various kinds of programs in terms of trainings for grassroots leaders, for youth leaders, for the community. We also conducted programs for people to have a better understanding on the interfaith relationships across all faith. But I would like to just focus in particular about our initiatives with regards to how do we promote this awareness and preserving our environment, speaking on the practical aspect. So for us, we try to adopt this, what we call as the abundance mentality. We work in a sense that we work collectively with other faith organizations, ground-up initiatives, and also worshiping places. So for example, especially in the time of Ramadan, we work together with the ground-up initiatives to create a campaign to ensure that Muslims in particular, when you perform your prayer, and try to not commit like a water wastage when we perform ablutions, for example. This is one example that we done. And when we do our iftar, the breaking of fast in a mosque, because it is normalized, it is a normalized culture in Singapore that there are several mosques who extended these services of breaking of fast to also for people of other faith communities, because they would like to observe what is it like to experience having this fasting with Muslims. And in presenting, in doing such programs, we also ensure that we use, say, biodegradable materials, and also to ensure that we do not have food wastage. We also conduct hackathon programs for youth leaders. And one of the topics that we address is actually on the environment. And I remember one of the topics that was raised is on the overconsumption of seafood and how does the different faith youths can come together and think about solutions in doing this. But lastly, one thing that I would like to highlight, beyond the practical and action aspect, I'm also happy to share, and I also believe that is something very in line to the topic of the conference today, that we have worked very closely with the Singapore Buddhist Federation to publish a publication called The Human Suffering, Spiritual Renewal and Common Action. It's a collaborative effort between the Muslims and Buddhist relations in Singapore. And among the topic that we highlighted is actually on the issue of environment, stewardship, and also consumerism within the society. And I thought, let me just quote a phrase from the publication itself, which I think it is very, it sits perfectly with the theme of today as we talk about the idea of science and ecology and the eco-dialogue between Muslims and Buddhist relation. Science delineates what is likely to happen as humans increasingly dominate Earth systems. But data are not a prescription. It is values, including religious views, that shape responses, both personal and societal. And I thought that was one of some of the favorite phrases that I have in this publication. And this is just a simple sharing that I have with you. But of course, I would love to have this open opportunity for an offline networking with everyone here. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Adli.
Thank you so much, Ustazah Lena Rosli. And with that, we have come to the end of this pre-event function. On behalf of the organizers, we'd like to thank all the participants who have agreed to speak and share their thoughts earlier. And we also, at the same time, apologize for those who have invited but unfortunately not able to have you speaking at this point. But in any case, we are delighted and happy to have all of you to stay until the end of the conference, and so that we can continue of exchanging of views on this topic. And before proceeding with the inaugural session, kindly ensure that we'd like to remind to ensure that your microphone is muted during this whole session. And I now have the pleasure of introducing the moderator for this inaugural opening address, Dr. Al-Wani Ghazali. Dr. Al-Wani Ghazali is a senior lecturer at the Department of Aqidah and Islamic Thought, Academy of Islamic Studies, University of Malaya. She is also the Deputy Director for University Malaya Center for Civilizational Dialogue, and she studied at the International Islamic University Malaysia for her bachelor and master degrees in Comparative Religion and the University of Melbourne, Australia for PhD on Dialogue of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, peace be upon him. And without further ado, I now hand over to Dr. Alwani Ghazali to start this opening address inaugural session. Over to you, Dr. Alwani.
Thank you, Mr. Adli Zakwan. We are now waiting for Venerable Geshe Dorji Dambul to arrive. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the inaugural session for the International Conference on Islam, Buddhism, Eco-Dialogue. Good morning, Venerable Geshe Dorji Dambul, Emeritus Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar, ladies and gentlemen. To begin, let me introduce you to the speakers of all the sessions in IBED conference. They are, number one, Dr. Reza Shah Kazmi, Muslim author and lecturer in the fields of comparative religion, Islamic spirituality and Quranic studies UK. Second, Professor Datuk Dr. Azizan Baharudin, Director, Center for Civilizational Dialogue, University Malaya, Malaysia. Third, Venerable Dr. Kl Dhammajoti from Malaysian Buddhist monk, Chair Professor at School of Philosophy, Renmin University, China, and Director of the Buddha Dharma Center of Hong Kong. Fourth, Emeritus Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar, holder of Al-Ghazali Chair of Epistemology and Civilizational Studies and Renewal, International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, ISTAT.IUM, Malaysia. Fifth, Venerable Dr. Dhammananda Abbas, Songdhamma Kalyani Monastery, Thailand. Sixth, Mr. Syed Jamaluddin and Ms. Fatima Ahmad. Mr. Syed Jamaluddin is the President of International Students of Islamic Psychology, Sweden. Seventh, Venerable Abbot Ken Rinpoche Tashi Sering, Abbot Serame Monastery, India. Eighth, Professor Dr. Nur Faridah Abdul Manaf, former Deputy Rector of International Islamic University of Malaysia. Ninth, Dr. David Loy, Professor of Buddhist and Comparative Philosophy, USA. 10th, Mr. Faisal Aziz, President of Muslim Youth Movement, ABI, Malaysia. 11th, Assistant Professor Venerable Dr. Karma Tashi Chodron, Deputy Education Director, Vajrayana Buddhist Council of Malaysia, and Assistant Professor at the University of Nottingham, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference is co-organized by many parties, with the key organizers that I will be announcing, which I begin with the three names of speakers previously mentioned. First, Emeritus Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar. Second, Mr. Syed Jamaluddin. Third, Mr. Faisal Aziz. The rest of the key organizers are: fourth, Mr. Benny Liao, Buddhist author and chief editor of Buddhist magazine, Eastern Horizon, Malaysia. Fifth, Mr. Tan Leng Huat, former president of Theravada Buddhist Council of Malaysia. Sixth, Mr. K.C. Liu, president of Tibetan Buddhist Council, Tibetan Buddhist Cultural Center, Malaysia. And last but not least, Mr. Pek Chi Han, former president of Vajrayana Buddhist Council of Malaysia. Allow me also to introduce our moderators for all the sessions in the conference. They are: first, Mr. Yusaimi Yusof. Second, Datuk Dr. Goh Pei Pin. Third, Puan Suhaila Muhammad. Fourth, Brother Tan Leng Huat. Fifth, Brother Wilson Ang. And number 6, Brother Benny Liao. Ladies and gentlemen, the program continues with an introductory remark for IBED conference by Emeritus Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar. Before he delivers the speech, please allow me to introduce his good self. Osman Bakar, a doctorate in Islamic philosophy from Temple University, Philadelphia, USA, is currently the holder of Al-Ghazali Chair of Epistemology and Civilizational Studies and Renewal at ISTEC at IUM. He is also an emeritus professor in philosophy of science at University of Malaya. He was formerly the distinguished professor and director of Sultan Umar Ali Saifuddin Center for Islamic Studies, SOASIS, University Brunei Darussalam. Professor Osman also formerly held the Malaysia Chair of Islam in Southeast Asia at the Prince Talal Al-Walid Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., and was a Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic and Research at University Malaya. Professor Osman is an author and editor of 40 books and more than 300 articles on various aspects of Islamic thought and civilization, particularly in Islamic science and philosophy, in which he is a leading authority. His most well-known books are Classification of Knowledge in Islam, 1992, and Tawheed and Science, 1992. His latest books are titled Al-Farabi, Life, Works and Significance, 2018, and Colonialism in the Malay Archipelago, Civilizational Encounters, 2020. He has been named among the 500 most influential Muslims in the world since 2009. He was made a Datuk with a spelling O apostrophe in 1999 and 1994 by the Sultan of Pahang, and a Datuk, spelling UK in the end, by the King in 2000. Three of his works that are most relevant to this conference are, first, the books entitled Environmental Wisdom for Planet Earth, the Islamic Heritage. Second book, Quranic Pictures of the Universe. And number three, an article entitled Influence of Islamic Science on Medieval Christian Conceptions of Nature. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Emeritus Professor Dr. Osman Bakar to deliver his introductory remark. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome. The floor is yours, Datuk. Please unmute.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alwani. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me greet all of you wherever you may be with the traditional greeting of Islam, Assalamu alaikum, peace be to you. On behalf of the co-organizers of the Islam Buddhism Echo Dialogue Conference, in short, IBED Conference, I would like to warmly welcome all speakers and participants to this historic online conference on an extremely important issue that the global human community is currently facing, namely the ecological crisis. In particular, a special welcome to our two keynote speakers. They are Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul and Dr. Reza Shah Kazemi. We regret very much that at the last minute, His Holiness has to withdraw his participation in the conference as the keynote speaker at this inaugural session this morning. We are all actually were looking forward to his presence, to his address, and he himself was actually looking forward to the IBED conference. But the COVID lockdown in Dharamsala, India, prevented him from delivering his keynote speech. Nonetheless, we are happy that His Holiness is kind enough to send his representative in the person of Geshe Dorji Damdul to address this inaugural session. Some of us know Geshe Dorji quite well. He's a young Buddhist scholar, but I know he's more than qualified to speak on the subject of the environment and ecology from the Buddhist perspective, for which he seems to have a great passion. I also have the pleasure of knowing Dr. Reza Shah Kazemi. He's a good old friend. I know him as one of the best contemporary scholars of Islamic spirituality, who is also at ease with the topic of Islam and ecology. He is widely known for his authoritative work on comparative studies of Islam and Buddhism. He will deliver his keynote address at the closing session of the conference tomorrow. We thank him for kindly accepting our invitation to address this conference as the second keynote speaker. I'm delighted to be part of this organizing team of the conference. We think we have chosen a very good theme for the conference. Let me say a few words about the significance of the theme, which is the application of religion and science to ecology and sustainability perspectives of Islam and Buddhism. In our view, the theme is very relevant to the present condition of the planet Earth, which we regard as our only home. Our planet Earth is currently in a state of ecological crisis, with grave implications for the future of humanity. The crisis is getting more serious, not less, more serious than ever. So does science tell us, despite the fact that more and more people now realize that the future of all living species on our planet Earth, on which human life itself depends, is at stake. Scholars and scientists have been talking about the need to address this global crisis for more than half a century. But somehow there seems to be a progressive deterioration in the quality of the environment and the ecological health of the planetary body of our Earth. The main reason is, I think, because people who are mainly responsible for the crisis do not want to listen to science. And they also do not want to listen to religion. And they also, well, they only want to listen to the whispers of their greed for more wealth and power through the exploitation of natural resources that are fast depleting. One of the main reasons why we have chosen the theme is that we would like to contribute to the popularization of the idea that religion and science should work together in addressing and overcoming the present ecological crisis. In particular, this means that religious leaders and activists and scholars of religion should work hand in hand with scientists or the scientific community in overcoming the ecological crisis. Although there has been such collaboration before, here and there in our contemporary world, it has been confined to a few people. For too long, people mostly listen to the voice of science when it comes to the issue of environmental and ecological crisis. By all means, let us continue to listen to the voice of science, because when it comes to monitoring the ecological health of our planet, its voice is the most reliable. But for God's sake, let us also listen to the voice of religion. It is our belief that religion has a lot of things to say about ecology and the environment of planet Earth. And you'll be listening to that in these 2 days. Now, let us be clear on the issue of ecological crisis. While it is very clear that ecology is a biophysical issue and thus to be addressed by science, it is no less clear, especially to religious scholars and authorities, that ecology is also a spiritual and moral issue and thus to be addressed by religion. In short, the ecological crisis has both a biophysical and human dimension, which therefore requires the attention of both science and religion. Moreover, it is obvious to us that the biophysical and human dimensions of ecology interact with each other. the nature and extent of the interaction depends on the kind of attitudes we humans have towards nature and on the kind of relationship we choose to have with the natural world. There's a stark difference between the relationship between man and nature in the pre-modern period and the corresponding relationship in the modern and contemporary period. The present ecological crisis has a lot to do with the kind of relationship that modern man has pursued with nature. The IBED conference would like to explore and understand how spirituality as the core of religion can play its constructive role in addressing the crisis in question. Some people have raised the issue of how can religions be an effective united front in responding to the ecological crisis when their respective fundamental teachings are so different from each other. Well, this conference seeks to show otherwise, that notwithstanding differences between religions, there are common grounds between them that would enable their respective followers to sit down together and discuss the problems of humanity, not just confined to ecology and environment. We, the organizers, think that the followers of different religions would be even more at ease when dealing with environmental and ecological issues. Another significance of the IBED conference, the theme, is that we can show to the whole world that Muslims and Buddhists and other religions can sit down to discuss together substantive issues of ecology and sustainability from the perspectives of their respective religion. We hope to strengthen our common position on issues of ecology and sustainability. The conference is also attended by followers of our religion. This augurs well for the future of multi-faith and multicultural approaches to the restoration of the ecological health of the planet Earth. Let me say a few words about the significance of this conference for the current initiative and goals of sustainable development. We are all aware of the 17 sustainable development goals, SDGs, adopted by the United Nations. Various institutions and organizations all over the world are pursuing the goals in their own ways, including in Malaysia. I would like to mention here the especially energetic program currently pursued by IIUN under the leadership of its rector, Tan Sri Zulkifli Abdul Razak, in relation to the 17 SDGs. However, being an Islamic university, IIUN is concerned about the lack of spirituality in the content of the goals. To address this rather obvious shortcoming, IIUN added spirituality and sustainability as its 18th SDG. Of course, IIUN's emphasis is on spirituality and sustainability from the Islamic perspective. However, that does not rule out a comparative religious perspective or approach to this particular issue. As a matter of fact, I think this is precisely what we are doing at this conference. We are all comparing, in particular, Islamic and Buddhist notes on the issue of sustainability, among others. It is our sincere hope that this conference will open up new spaces for exploring our commonalities on issues of global significance and thus strengthening our mutual understanding. It is also our sincere hope that this conference will be greeted with enthusiasm by both Muslims and Buddhists the world over. It is also our hope that in the near future, IBED will be able to organize interfaith dialogues that will include members of the other faiths. Let me conclude my introductory remarks at this inaugural session by emphasizing that the IBED conference is a historic one. Since this is the first time that Muslims and Buddhists have worked together on a big scale in organizing an international conference on the extremely important subject of ecology and sustainability of planet Earth. This initiative is highly significant one, since Muslims and Buddhists constitute the two biggest religious groups, not only in Malaysia, but also in our regional community, ASEAN. Thank you to everyone who made this conference possible. The organizers from various organizations, the speakers, the participants, congratulations once again, and have a successful conference. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be to you.
Thank you very much, Emeritus Professor Datuk Dr. Usman, for the wonderful introduction for the conference. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the inevitable circumstance at His Holiness Office, which had to be closed recently, His Holiness is therefore represented by Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul for the conference inaugural session. Before he delivers the speech, allow me to introduce Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul. Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul is the Director of Tibet House Cultural Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama in New Delhi. After 15 years of study in Buddhist philosophy, he completed his Geshe Larampa degree, which is equivalent to PhD, in 2002 from the Drapung Losling Monastic University, and completed also a year of tantric studies at the Gyutmet Tantric College. In 2003, he was a visiting fellow at Girton College in Cambridge University, and in 2005, he was appointed as the official translator of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In 2004 to 2005, he also served as the philosophy lecturer for the Emory University's study abroad program in Dharamsala. In 2008, the Office of His Holiness assigned him to work in the US on His Holiness the Dalai Lama's book, Emotional Awareness, that was co-authored by the world-renowned psychologist Paul Ekman of the University of California Medical School. He also worked on His Holiness book, Beyond Religion, and the series of Art of Happiness books, which were written jointly by His Holiness and Professor Howard Cutler. He continues to be involved in the critical editing work for books authored by His Holiness and has written a number of important papers for national and international conferences on topics such as the paradox of brain and mind. Geshe Dorji Damdul has been a visiting fellow in Delhi University for the departments of philosophy, psychology, and Buddhist studies since 2009 and 2008. In 2011, Indira Gandhi National Open University recruited him as one of the chief experts to design the syllabi for BA and MA courses on the Tibetan studies. In 2016, Tibet House in Delhi launched a 4-year international Nalanda master's course in Buddhist philosophy, a course developed by Geshe Dorji Damdul in line with the wishes of His Holiness, in line with the wishes of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. With great exposure to modern science, he has a unique ability to explain the profound concepts of Buddhist philosophy in a way that is comprehensible to Western and Eastern audiences alike. He has hundreds of devoted students around the world, and he frequently visits different countries to teach Buddhism and to participate in dialogues with scientists and academics. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul. Venerable, the floor is yours. Please unmute your mic. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, scholars, brothers and sisters, this is to express my heartfelt thanks to the organizers of the international conference on the application of religion and science to ecology and sustainability, perspectives from Islam and Buddhism. Many of you might be wondering as to how this conference came into being. It was back in 2019 that when I was in Malaysia, my friends, Brother Peck and Brother Casey Liu, two of them, told me that, okay, today you're going to meet a very renowned Islamic scholar and a professor. And I was so happy. And eventually I met Professor Osman Bagarji and Datuk. And meeting with him, having some dialogues, and shared my thoughts about His Holiness's view of the world, how the world should come together. And he was so excited, and I shared with him the universal ethics His Holiness is advocating to be introduced in the modern education system. And Professor Osman Bagar, he instantly jumped to the idea that I and my institute would host this first meeting, first conference between the Islamic scholars and the Buddhist scholars to speak on this universal ethics as envisioned by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So it was extremely beautiful meeting and very fortunate indeed, a great honor for me that I eventually ended up in his institute, where he so kindly brought his colleagues, professors, and we had exchanges. After that, during the tea time, there was a lady professor, a Muslim lady professor with a hijab, and she asked if I can take a photograph with you. And she was literally crying. I said, yeah, of course. And she said that I want to show this photograph to my daughter. She would be so happy. Love of the mother for her daughter is so beautiful. And then Professor Osman himself said that his daughter is one of the greatest fans of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So this is how we built such a rapport, such a friendship. And I really appreciate the openness and the love that Professor Osman exuded all along. So this is what culminated in this conference. So of course, yes, it is indeed a greatly historic and extremely meaningful coming together of two civilizations, coming together for the same and common effort for ecology. So with this in mind, I'd like to wholeheartedly thank all the organizers since its inception of the planning of the conference. First of all, congratulate them for all their hard works. So here, this historic event brings Muslim and Buddhist brothers and sisters from all over the world on the same stage in the spirit of brotherhood and sisterhood. They're two towards a common effort to create broader awareness and thus take care of the ecology for the good of today's and the future generations. Just as we, the people of the world, gathered here today, we're all anticipating to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama with us for this conference. As Professor Osman so rightly indicated, His Holiness also considers this dialogue as an extremely important event for several reasons. Bringing harmony between the human beings and the environment, which is only possible through collective efforts, which in turn is feasible only through developing harmony among the human beings and among the different religions. Why ecology is so important? From how the people and countries actively destroy the environment in all sorts of forms, like heavy deforestation and the Amazon rainforest fires, nuclear proliferation, and so forth, people are given the impression that ecology is the least important of all. This is all our naivety. COVID-19 reminded us that our well-being is the most important thing. The money and the wealth for which we are destroying the environment is not the end, but not to be forgotten that they're at the most intended as the means to the end. What is the end? The end is the well-being of the citizens of the world as visibly taught to us by the COVID-19. Whole world has to remain locked down. Nations have to lose and sacrifice billions of dollars, sacrifice the education of their children in schools, colleges, and universities. This is well highlighted in the 17 SDG enumerated by UNO, as indicated by Professor Osman, more precisely in the first 3 points. No poverty, good health, no hunger, and well-being. From the space, if you look at the various celestial objects, there's only one planet which starkly stands out as the most beautiful one, exuding blue hues. What is that? It's the planet Earth, our home. If you lose it, the whole inhabitants will die, and there's no other planet for us to escape to. This is well reflected in the book, Our Only Home, by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when he said, "Yesterday, our beautiful blue planet was still a natural paradise in many areas. Today, it is already withered in many places, and tomorrow, it will be uninhabitable in many regions if we just carry on as before." He also said in the foreword to the book, Ecological Responsibility, a dialogue with Buddhism, published by Tibet House, Delhi, 1997. Resolving the environmental crisis is not just a question of the ethics, but a question of a survival. The natural environment is very important, not only for those of us alive now, but also for the future generations. If we exploit it in extreme ways, even though we may get money or other benefits from it now, in the long run, we ourselves and future generations will suffer. The Buddha exhorted, all phenomena of pleasant and unpleasant nature arise from the respective causes. It is pertinent to study and identify the causes of the ecological crisis. Some of the causes of man-made environmental degradation are ozone depletion, excessive deforestation, greenhouse effect, water pollution, air pollution, nuclear waste dumping, excessive meat consumption, and so forth. The immediate cause of these is our attempt to feed our endless greed. This greed is because of ignorance, which fails to see the interdependent nature of the fragile planet Earth as a habitat and the human beings and animals as the inhabitants. Inhabitants will perish when the world as the habitat perishes. Let us look at how tsunami washes away everything. Your house, your children, your family, your money, including your bank, however much money you have in the bank. They all are washed away like the small match boxes being washed away by a flood. In the Buddhist texts, where the beings are oftentimes referred to as childlike, it's a child who throws stones to the glass house one takes shelter in, and to regret at the end over the loss of the shelter when one suffers from cold, rain, and so forth. Dr. Franz Alt said in the book, Our Only Home, a climate appeal to the world jointly written with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Every day, we're emitting globally about 150 million tons of carbon dioxide. Every day, we're killing off about 150 animal and plant species. We are losing daily 50,000 tons of fertile soil, and deserts grow by about 80,000 hectares every day. Our greed for meat destroys rainforests. In 2019, hundreds of millions of Africans lived through the most terrible drought within living memory and are fearful of the next famine. The whole subcontinent is crying for water. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, on June 7, 1992, to the preliminary Earth Summit, Global Forum of the United Nations Conference on Environment Development, held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, This blue planet of ours is a delightful habitat. Its life is our life, its future our future. Indeed, the earth acts like a mother to us all. Like children, we are dependent on her. In the face of such global problems as the greenhouse effect and depletion of the ozone layer, individual organizations and single nations are helpless. Unless we all work together, no solution can be found. Our Mother Earth is teaching us a lesson in universal responsibility. Where lies the solution? Looking at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals as highlighted by UNO. Number 6, clean water and sanitation. Number 7, affordable and clean energy. 11, sustainable cities and communities. 12, responsible consumption and production. 13, climate action. 14, life below water. 15, life on earth. We need collective efforts. On the international level, leaders play a great role. They are the ones to play a great role. For example, handling COVID is not what one nation can do. I was so impressed to hear Mr. Blinken, the Secretary of State of US, during the meeting we had on his first day of the visit to India, 2021 in Delhi, saying that no one nation can do anything to curb this virus. It should be a collective effort of all the countries. As individual citizens, also, we need to take responsibility in this effort. It was very inspiring to see His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, emphasizing a lot on preservation of ecology during his public teachings in Sarnath on 29th of December, 1990, the place where the Buddha gave his first sermon. There, His Holiness the Dalai Lama distributed lots of fruit-bearing tree seeds, which he bought from the monetary part of his Nobel Peace Prize in 1989. Thus inspiring all his followers and admirers to embrace, to replenish the environment with love and care. His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, "Since I too have a responsibility in this matter, that is to work for the protection of the environment and to see that the present and the future generations of mankind can make use of refreshing shade and the fruits of trees. I bought these seeds of fruit-bearing trees with part of my Nobel Peace Prize money to be distributed now to people represented in the different regions from all continents of the world." During the Kalachakra gathering, these seeds have been kept near the Kalachakra mandala for purification and blessings, since these include seeds of apricot, walnut, papaya, guava, etc., suitable for planting under varying geographical conditions. Experts in respective places should be consulted on the planting and care, and thus you all should see that my sincere aspiration is fulfilled. One distinctive yet very noble mindset that I noticed in the people who love and stand for the environment is that they will never engage in killing another human brother or sister. They care for life. If this altruistic compassion, which drives them to become a noble being as opposed to a selfish person, can be taught to the world leaders and the common people alike, the world is going to be a very different place, a place of worship by the present and the future generations. How can we teach this altruistic heart to the people? It always intrigues me to see that what His Holiness the Dalai Lama says resonates with that of what Einstein thought when Einstein said, "A human being is a part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He or she experiences himself, herself, his or her thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening a circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty." Every time His Holiness gives public addresses within or outside India, experts come with the same question. Your Holiness. Where are we as a world going wrong? That world crisis keep increasing despite the great advancement in modern education. His Holiness, without second thought response, the well-being of the world is determined by the development of both the brain and heart. Unfortunately, the modern education is designed to develop only the brain and not the heart. Now is the high time that we introduce program for heart development as part of the modern education system. It has been one of the greatest efforts of His Holiness the Dalai Lama in this pursuit of introducing universal ethics, which eventually culminated into the launch of an extremely important and efficacious program, a gift and a legacy for the world known as social, emotional, ethical learning. In short, C-learning, as a great mission of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, undertaken by Emory University, Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Any institution or even the individuals can take the maximum benefit from this program. All materials are available for free. Even teacher trainings are given for free for the institutions. This is also to bring it to your attention that many institutions from across the world have been receiving the benefit of this program. I pray that this program very soon will be adopted by UNL for the world at large. I'm confident that many future generations will reap the benefit to change the course of the world from the darkness of ignorance and miseries to the light of happiness, equality, and breathing fresh air of compassion and harmony. Let me read a verse from the poem of His Holiness, which he wrote for ecology, and the end of the verse, which His Holiness always recite for the joy of the entire world of sentience and non-sentience. The first one, being attentive to the nature of interdependence of all creatures, both animate and inanimate, one should never slacken in one's efforts to preserve and conserve nature's energy. The second verse, as long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With my profound thanks to the organizers who worked so tirelessly since the inception of the planning for this conference. My very dear friend, Emeritus Professor Dr. Osman Bagher, and Mr. Faisal Aziz, Brother Peck Chihen, Brother Ten, Lin Huat, Brother Casey Liu, Brother Benny, and Brother Said Jamaluddin Berang Mirin. I would like to also thank Mr. Chetan Samtullah, as Secretary of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who called me on phone to do this presentation. I must not miss to express my deep admiration to Mr. Jimbala, the coordinator of the Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Southeast Asia, because of whose vision all these things happening in one way or the other, directly, indirectly. This is the heart of this person. And let us pray that COVID-19 subside from the world altogether so that all the beings can breathe the fresh air of compassion, joy, and greater meaning again. Thank you all for your kind listening.
Thank you very much, Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul. That was a very eye-opening speech. You're right, Professor Datuk. This is another amazing personality among the Buddhism sitting beside His Holiness. So, ladies and gentlemen, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is happy to give each of us his book entitled Ecology, Ethics and Interdependence, in which the conversation between him and the leading thinkers are held on climate change. The organizers will maybe contact you after the session. The session now continues with a question and answer. The questions can be posed to both Emeritus Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bagher and Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul, and we welcome them to answer. To all participants who have questions to ask, please be on standby mode. All right, I got the first question from Venerable Dr. Dhammapala Mahathero. Okay. Dr. Dhammapala. Dr. Dhammapala is a monastic advisor of Theravada Buddhist Council of Malaysia and abbot founder for the Brahmavihara Monastery, Malacca. Dr. Dhammapala, please unmute your mic.
Okay, so Venerable Geshe, I have a question here. There will be more refugees in the future from climate change, flood, war, etc. So one way of solving the refugee crisis is for the fortune householders to house a refugee family each. One, humanity stronger together. So what teachings in Islam and Buddhism can help promote harmony of living together in the project of refugee rehoming? Thank you.
So we give the floor for Venerable first and then followed by Professor. Please, Venerable, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. This is the extremely important. Can you hear me? Thank you. This is an extremely important point, how to accommodate another refugee within your space. I personally would say that the one is already there's a clash happening from distance, fights happening, let's say the displacing a group of people from one place to another. And then the another part is the where somebody is to bring somebody in your own house. So it should be very practical. Practicality that I am sharing with you is that so the moment, even in family, there's a clash happening between the husband and wife, parents and children. So where the family whole family agrees to accept somebody outside us. We don't know what that outside is like. One has own personal, the personal thinking can probably clash. But I would say that one possibility would be, as the UNO is doing, International Amnesty is doing, making sure that they're really taking care.
The line seems to be breaking.
We have to see to the reality. The baby to give shelter in some country, some local places to put together. And can really resonate so well with each other.
Seems to be breaking again. If it's still breaking, I think we can pass it over to Professor. Yeah. Seems that the line is breaking and Venerable Geshe is not with us.
Yes. Al-Wani, to the question, like all global problems of great magnitude. And I think refugees has become a global problem resulting from natural disasters and man-made disasters, all that. And of course, the question of ecological crisis. There are usually two approaches. One is the short term, and the other is the long term. As for the short term, I think which needs immediate response. And I think NGOs, non-governmental organizations of different regions and multi-religious organizations, they play their role. They have played their role. Maybe it's not enough, but they have played their role. I think with the new determination by the leaders of the civil society groups, more understanding than them, I think they will respond together to the natural disasters and so on. But for the longer term, programs, responses, I think I like the idea presented by His Holiness Pope Francis. I think one of our friends this morning mentioned his encyclopedia. Basically that is on ecology. I like that. I quoted in my work, because it is time now, because of the interrelatedness of all problems, to show that human problems are related to each other. And not only that, related also to the ecological problem. So he introduced the word integral ecology. I think in the coming years, humanity is going to need more and more this idea of integral ecology. By integral ecology is meant that there is an interaction, which I mentioned in my introduction, the interaction between the biophysical ecology and the human ecology. Human ecology is now beginning to be recognized more and more. Universities introduce programs on human ecology. Basically, we need to understand human ecology, including cultural and built environment, the kind of built environment we constructed, all right? And for its connection with the natural or biophysical ecology. Now, but what I'm saying is this: the problem of these refugees cannot be treated as an isolated problem. Yeah, we must look at refugees from the broader perspective. What are the factors that contribute to the refugees, whether it is man-made or natural disasters? Needs an integrated action from governments, from civil society. Therefore, it needs a new kind of thinking, a new mindset. The old ways of looking at my country, your country, that's not going to work. The kind of being separated by political boundaries, by geographical boundaries, I think those days are going to, are no longer sufficient for us to treat a global issue. Therefore, world organizations, United Nations, UNESCO, and so on, and among the Muslims, they have the OIC and so on. Inclusivism, the inclusive attitude to solving our problems is very much necessary. So that is the longer term. So I think if we do both, we need both. We have to do both. Yeah, to address today, of course, refugees, but who knows where they're going to be tomorrow? Now we have words like ecocide. The word ecocide has been introduced. We must do something to prevent our nature from the ecocide. All right, and then also genocide, cultural genocide by the inside. This genocide also has to be stopped. So as I see it, humanity is in such a time that we have to work together. So we need the framework, the belief that enables us to address this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the answer, Emeritus Professor. We have lost Venerable Geshe at the moment. We will continue later when he returns, but for the time being, let's move on to the second questioner. The second questioner is Dr. Muhammad Ismath Ramzi.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doctor, for giving the opportunity. My question is, my question to the representative of His Holiness, Reverend Prof. Gesha Dorji Damrul, and also to the Professor Dato Usman Bakar. What is your opinion on religious leaders who keep silence when a group of people misuse their religious teaching and sentiment to exploit an innocence of people and the ecological system for their own benefits? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So now Venerable Geshe is already here, joined us already. Maybe you can pass the question to him.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, clear. Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, I would say that amongst the religious leaders, there are two kinds. One, who are very open-minded plus courageous, who really think about the humanity. And the another group, the fanatics. So where the fanatics, we can't expect them to come to the rescue of the people who've been persecuted in the name of your own religion. So where the religious leaders who are more open-minded and who are very courageous, who really think of the religion for the humanity, not the humanity for your religion. These people, these leaders are like what Professor Osman Bagarji is doing. So where he's so, he embraces the other religious leaders and then see what can be done for the ecology, for the world. So these leaders, we must look for platforms. We must look for ways and means to bring these leaders together and then see how they can work to raise their voice against the people from their own religious sects who persecute the other groups in the name of religion. That is very important. Otherwise, we can't really expect or force the people who are fanatics. Sometimes, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says that the fanatics are everywhere. Terrorists are everywhere in any religion. So therefore, this is what we need to keep in mind. For example, like this conference is incredibly great, as Professor Osmanji rightly indicated. This is historic, where the people come together. And I would say that Brother Peck and Brother Kesidu, two of them, they brought Professor Osman here, and then we met, and then everything sparked from there. So this is where everyone, for example, the Dr. Muhammad Ismath, and you also, the doctor, you must also give hands in this meeting with Brother Peck and Brother Kisidu, Brother Benny, and so forth, and that to bring Professor Osman and others together, and then we create the wave. So this is how we can expect help to curb the ills not of the religion, of the people who with the name of the religion persecute other people.
Thank you for the answer, Venerable Geshe. The questioner just now was Dr. Muhammad Ismath Ramzi, Senior Lecturer, Faculty of Education, and the representative of Center for Civilizational Dialogue, UM. Our next question is the question from Ms. Yo Karpan, Chairman and Founding Partner, Candle Court Capital Partners, Commissioner of Tzu Chi Foundation Malaysia. Please unmute your mic. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Geshe-la. I have a question on vegetarianism. Livestock farming is a key contributor to global warming and a reason for the fast disappearance of the green lungs of Mother Earth. So clearly our spiritual security is severely under threat. So from a religion perspective, why is it not compulsory for practitioners to adopt a plant-based diet to uphold the no-killing precept and coherently push for an environmentally friendly and sustainable plant-based diet? And is laboratory-grown meat acceptable in the practice of vegetarianism in not breaching the precept of no killing? Thank you.
No further questions. So I open the question to either to Emeritus Professor or Venerable Geshe.
I will respond, but let Venerable Geshe speak first, respond first.
All right, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. This is a very serious matter, very serious question. Thank you so much, Ms. Yo Karpeng. Thank you so much. In fact, I fully agree with you. This reminds me of when I was very young meaning I must be 36, and I was teaching I was teaching in India, students from America, and during the break time, one girl student rushed to me and said, "Geshe-la, I have a very, very, very important question." And it's so like she was the panicky. She said, "I have a very, 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 very important question." I said, "Yes." Keep calm and ask me the question. And she said, "Are you vegetarian?" I said, "Yes, I am." Then she was expecting that I was not veg. And she said, "Oh, then I have no question." I said, "Why? You, in the first place, you get so excited. There's a very urgent question coming in. Now you said you have no question. What's that?" And then finally she gathered her, sanity, and then asked, "Okay, but it's not that all Buddhists are the vegetarian." I said, "That's true, not that all Buddhists are vegetarian. But then why? The Buddha taught compassion. So non-veg means non-compassion. How these two are compatible?" And I said, "Okay, that's good. I'm non-vegetarian. I'm vegetarian. So I am the right person to give the answer. If the non-veg gives the answer, it can be excused. Whereas I'm vegetarian, so I'm the right person. That you ask the question, the right person, and I'm the right person to give the answer." So basically, number one, let us not expect the world to be perfect. Number one. If you expect the world to be perfect, you will always be agitated. Because the world is not perfect, and your mind, what do you think and what the world reflects, these two are contradictory. So you will always be agitated. If you are agitated, somebody who is compassionate, when that person is agitated, we are losing one compassionate person. So the compassionate person decreases number, then the evil increases. So therefore, how to maintain your compassion, how to maintain your composure is to know the reality. Don't feel agitated. Know the reality. The reality is that the world is not perfect. So now the compassionate people, what's the definition of compassion? Is to save the imperfect world towards the perfection. So if the compassionate person expects everybody to be perfect, what's the role of compassion? There's no role for compassion. Everybody's perfect. Why do we need compassion? So the compassion, by the very definition, is to make sure that somebody is being helped, which means a small toddler or a young child, age 5, 6, 7, eventually should be made a professor. Don't say that, oh, you have to make you professor, and then you just jump into the PhD program. No, this doesn't work. So this child has to be taken to the level of the professorship in a gradual step. So somebody who's consuming, say, like a kg of meat per month, if you succeed out of love, not out of anger, anger will only destroy yourself and others. Only love conquers everything. With this love, the other person will receive, they will listen to you. The receptivity will be opened. So with this, if you encourage the person, okay, how about reducing from 10 kg to 9 kg? The person will say yes. If you say 10 kg to 0, the person says, who are you? So this is the skillfulness. So therefore, all the religious doctrines, for example, in Buddhism, there's a tremendous emphasis on skillfulness. We are expected to help the people from where they are to a higher level, which we can't expect to make it happen overnight. It has to be done in steps. So for that matter, the person who wants the change to happen, that person must not be irritated. That person must be calm. And then on that basis, skillfulness is required, and you must exude in ways of compassion, in ways of love and affection, that the person receives, the person becomes receptive to what you just say. And this how, only this is the way by which you can expect the world to change from darkness to the light. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Geshe. Let's hear what Emeritus Professor would like to say.
Yes. Since this conference is about ecology, I will address your question from an ecological point of view. The ways of nature is diversity. The way of nature is diversity, although underlying that diversity is unicity. And if you go to the human level, the human world is also diversity. From the perspective of, from Islamic perspective, for example, the dietary laws of different religions differ from each other. So God has sent different laws to different people throughout human history. If you look at the dietary laws of the Jewish people, in the Old Testament, for example, it's far more strict than some other religions. So, in this diversity, while preserving ecology, by all means, those who are vegetarian stay with their vegetarian way of life. Those who with other dietary habits, by means, in the case of Islam, yes, meat is permissible, but only the meat of those animals which are vegetarians. Animals that are vegetarian, that's all. So I don't think that any of the dietary habits of the different religions is the cause of this ecological problem of the world. All right, I think the problem lies elsewhere. Nothing to do with the dietary habits of different people. So I think let our world be diverse as far as dietary habits are concerned. All right, and different regions has their own reasons, and rationale why they have those dietary habits. We respect those differences in our dietary habits, and I think the important thing is that we look what are really the main causes of our ecological problem. So that is my short answer to that question. Unity in diversity, including in dietary habits. I love vegetable food, vegetarian food.
Thank you very much for the answer from both Emeritus Professor and Venerable Geshe. I think because it's 6 minutes left for the session, I would like to have our final question for this session. And the question is from Insigne Muhammad Jamaluddin. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Allied Coordinating Committee of Islamic NGOs, Paksin. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you, Dr. Alwani. Venerable Geshi Dorji Damdul, Professor Emeritus of my teacher, Professor Osman Bakar, esteemed scholars, religious leaders, most respective activists and friends. Very quick question to our most esteemed scholars here. There are many revelations and edicts in the scripture emphasizing the need to value ecology and to promote sustainability. Islam, for example, promotes utmost respect for human lives and environment. Yeah? Animals also have their rights. The Prophet Muhammad says, conserve water even if you are by the river. Yeah, to that extent. Yeah? And we all know that science have improved life and sustainability by leaps and bounds, yeah, over the past 1 century. The challenge, however, in the question is poverty and unequal wealth distribution. 1% of the population owns half of the world's net asset or wealth. And 1.3 billion people in 107 developing countries are multi-dimensionally in abject poverty. Yeah? Mr. Elon Musk, for example, has now a net worth bigger than the whole Malaysian economy of 32 million people. So that's the disparity. Yeah? And so the question is, how does a poor be able to think, to learn, and be concerned about ecology and sustainability when his main concern is putting food on the table for his family? Thank you. Yeah.
Over to Professor Emeritus Professor and then to Venerable Geshe. Please unmute your mic, Emeritus Professor.
Yes, okay. To the question by Brother Jamaluddin, I think the rich and the poor have their own different responsibilities. I mean, because every human being has a responsibility towards the natural world, the world of nature. So for the rich people, the wealthy people, the demands on that are more, much more than to be expected from the poor people. It's not a question of this is the task of the rich people only, but not the poor. We don't say the poor are exempted. No, precisely because the relationship between human beings and nature, that is a necessity. In other words, it is not an option. It is not an option for us by saying that I'm poor, so I can do anything I like towards the environment. If you are poor, according to your ability, yeah. The point is, we must have an integrated relationship with nature. Nature is not only a source of our physical needs, not only a source of our moral needs, because nature is also a source of moral lessons for us. And the nature, our relationship with nature is also spiritual. So I think the important thing now is to develop a kind of mind in which the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the moral, define this together in an integrated way, define our relationship with nature. Of course, for example, the Quran, you know very well, scolds the very rich, the wealthy people, especially the hypocrites. The hypocrites. Who are these hypocrites according to the Quran? Well, early in the second chapter of the Quran, when it is said to them, do not create mischief and corruption on earth. So these people to whom the Quran addressed, what is their reply? Their reply is, we are peacemakers. We are just peacemakers. We want, this is for development. All right? But actually, what they say, what they do, are contrary to what we mean by peace, what we mean by development in the real sense, in the real sense of the word. I think our problem precisely because there are those who think that they are developing the world in a way that's beneficial to all humanity. But that is not the case. We look at all literature by scholars, by scientists, and so on. As far as concerned, scientists are on the side of religion. Religion and science are together in saying that human beings need a new lifestyle, needs a new way of life that does not make too big a demand that is beyond our natural world to take care of. I think that's my response.
Thank you very much for the response. Any word from you, Venerable Geshe?
Thank you. This is a very important question which resonates. One of the greatest issues which His Holiness is addressing is about the gap between the rich and poor. In this connection, what I would say is that His Holiness always talks about two things. One is the immediate solution and the long-term solution. And the immediate solution is like, the richer countries or the richer, the institutions. Instead of giving money, give skills. Give skills. If you give skills, give workshops to the people how to look for food, then that suffices. That one skill suffices giving food for the whole life. So this is considered as very important, and particularly, say, the more sensible NGOs, more sensible individuals, more sensible countries who are keen to work to bring bridge between the rich and the poor. So there His Holiness says that yes, just the immediate the action should be to give really food aids and so forth. But we have to also think of giving skills. This is number one. Then number two is, a little for a long term to promote awareness through this conference, through other conferences. People, like-minded people, they should come together. Okay, this is the issue there. How are we going to address this issue? For example, how Dr. Yourself, Dr. Muhammad Jamaluddin, how you brought up this must be brought out to as many the platforms as possible, so that good people are always there. Oftentimes they don't get the information. They are not ignited. They don't know this. So, and they should be reminded. So when you bring these issues up, they will be activated. Okay, I should also have to do something. This will come. This is how the good people should spread the wave of this awareness. This is number two. Then the next part, which is so important, is that when I was in Finland, and I took for granted, in most of the places we talk about, the annual checkup. And checkup means that you have to go to a doctor, you give money to a doctor, then register, and then I asked, how do you go for medical checkup? Every annual checkup. And everybody raised their hands. And then I asked, how much do you give? They said that they were surprised. They were surprised to hear this question. How much you give? No, we don't have to give. We just sign up and then the checkup happens. I can't believe that. They could not believe my question. I could not believe the answer. So the point was that the system is so good. The system is so good that people pay their tax And the government actually gives the provision for all these benefits. So the governments and the leaders, corrupted leaders, can be very complicated. So how to get rid of the corrupted leaders? Not now. We have to the long-term benefit. The long-term solution is to look for the future generations. And how to build these future generations? They will not automatically become like a divine. We can't expect that. So they will also, if we don't go for a strategic planning, then they can follow the corrupted the corrupted leaders. So we should make sure that their training is very different. So what is that? The only hope lies in the universal ethics, which is Holiness the Dalai Lama is always promoting that this awareness of the humanity, oneness of the humanity, must be inculcated in the minds of the youngsters, so that educating the heart must be made as a part of the modern education curriculum, and it must be adopted by the UNO. That all the countries, they adopt this as a part of their education system, that the youngsters, their mind will be trained in a way to see the world as one family rather than my pocket and your pocket. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venerable Geshe, for the answer. The answer just now marks the closing of this inaugural session. I know that in the chat box, there are so many responses and so many questions, and really appreciate the participation of all the audience in the room. However, we have come to the end of this session, and please continue giving support and the active, giving us the active participation in all the sessions, in all the coming sessions. We are thinking of providing a space at the website for the remaining questions that have not been able to be brought up in the session, throughout the session. Well, I think I would like to apologize for that. And again, thank you very much for the pertinent questions from the participants and the very immaculate answers from both Venerable Geshe and Emeritus Professor Dr. Osman. Ladies and gentlemen, for the remaining of the announcements, I'm handing the session over to the MC, Mr. Adli Zakwan. Mr. Adli, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Al-Wani, for moderating the session. And of course, much gratitude and thankfulness to His Holiness, the Venerable, for sharing, Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul, to share your thoughts, and of course not to forget our own Professor Osman Bakar for connecting the mind and our hearts with regards to this issue. While now time shows it's already about 1:10 p.m. and as we are processing whatever that we have listened for the past few hours in the morning session, we will now like to take about 1 hour to process all this information, at the same time also taking a break for us to have lunch and also prayers and meditation. And our next session will be topic 2, the concept of ecology, sources from Quran and Buddhist scriptures. And the speakers will be Emeritus Professor Osman Bakar, Venerable Bhikkhuni Dr. Dhammananda from Thailand, which will be moderated by Encik Yusaimi Yusof. So for this 1 hour break, you may stay logged into the Zoom meeting, or if you choose to log out, you may later use the same Zoom link that was sent to your email to join the conference again. And with that, I wish that you have a great lunch and hope to see you all shortly at 2 p.m.
Ali,
thank you so much.
Ali, we take a photo, please.
Oh, there is a request to take photo. If that's the case, then I would like to request everyone to please switch on the video to allow us to take a group photo. One smile. Right, we're going to do the next page. Switch on your video, please. 3, 2, 1, smile. If you're not sure which page that you are in, just continue smiling. Thank you so much. And the next page, please. 3, 2, 1, smile. Can I check with the technical team? Is everything okay? Another one. Okay, another last speech. 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, with that, the organizers, thank you, and all speakers and participants for joining us for the past few hours. We wish you to have a great lunch, great Zuhur prayer, great meditation, and I'll see you back at 2 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.